时和中国大陆建了最多的厂，而且和台湾的人民的利益和台湾人民的政治各种关系错综复杂。它是唯一一个连接美中台最重要的商人，而且与刚刚发生的华为事件还有这个 ZTE 的科技事件，以及中美之间现在发生的最重要的经济技术的制裁和偷盗技术的问题他是最重要的关键相关人士，又是一个中美贸易技术知识产权，还有一个中美贸易争议这个争端当中的关键人物。大家也都知道，郭台铭先生在台湾有着重大的影响，他在大陆、在美国、在世界的科技界也有重大的影响。那么他现在呢做出了参与2020年总统选举的这个决定，对待台湾来讲这是一个历史性的革命性的事件，可以说它可能决定着台湾的未来，它可能影响2300万台湾人民的整个的未来的走向何方的一个关键事件。那么今天我们会和班农先生呢来今天谈谈这个问题首先呢，我们这个看一看一个短片，在2018年9月5号我谈到的郭台铭先生。那么这个短片大家可以看到我往这点，我这离班农先生近点这个短片大家可以看到当年2018年9月5号，我曾经这个说出当时最火的叫科比柯文哲，还有后来的韩文瑜，都要冒出来竞选台湾总统。那么现在这个事实已经得到了验证。现在我们来看一下这个视频吧。OK。
你们的 KP 当年选举时候说过啥？我简单的让人查查，你承诺过的事情基本没做到。当年他进去后，他最想抓的就是谁？把马英九干掉，你也没干马英九然后把那个小巨蛋的事儿你想搞定，你也没搞定是吧？不但没搞定，你还跟这个关企联合，然后你现在开始什么玩大胆的了？你想继续干，下次来选这个台湾的总统，肯定不是你了。台湾下届总统就是郭台铭了。你就不用想了，肯定是郭台铭不用选，郭台铭早就布好局了郭台铭早就布好局了。然后你想继续连任，大陆以为你连任了，就在这块捧你，但是你记住，你就是个棋子儿，你不允许伤害台湾人民，你不允许卖台。
这个班农先生。这个大家看到这个的时候呢，这个说实在话，我都得相当的佩服文贵先生这个。
Even I have to say that I really quite admire Miles Guo myself.
这个我佩服的不是我这个人，就是历史上给了我很大的机遇。
I'm not really saying that I admire my own person. I appreciate that history has given me this momentum.
让我了解了很多共产党的运作和共产党的内部这些的机制，包括我现在能掌握的所有的他们无法屏蔽掉的，我可以获得了随时的情报的能力。
What I am saying is that I have been with the Communist Party for a long time, so I have this opportunity to get to know the information, the mechanism with which that they are operating, and also the capability with which that I could gather the information in a very speedy way.
共产党的战略有一个叫做非常有意思，都知道这个过去的西北军就是当时习近平主席的爸爸领导的高岗还有一个西北的这个刘司令包括习主席的父亲，当中有一个女英雄叫做双枪老太婆。
So you see, the China has this strategy that is actually started by the father of our President Xi Jinping, and that was called the Northwest Army. Gao Gang, Liu Xi, this army had also very famous that they tried to develop this double gun women's army.
所以说，在当时刘志丹还有这高岗下面有一个双枪老太婆，所以说他们说那个当时赢就是双枪老太婆，所以他们很迷信。共产党说，如果你想赢，你要双枪啊，双枪有更多赢的机会啊。
So that the double gun old women army basically is talking about that with 2 guns that it would help with the result. So today, even when Xi Jinping started, that he would also use the double gun strategy for a lot of things.
那么今天的台湾啊，他们布局韩国瑜，又最后抛出郭台铭，就是他们对台湾的最猛的招，叫双枪政策。
So today we can see that Taiwan, right? And with this strategy, on the one hand, we see Han Kuo-yu to run the president's campaign, and then on the other hand, we also see Guo Taiming. Both were pawns being placed in this presidential bidding, and that is what we call the double gun strategy.
这个事件可以说对台湾人民影响深远，对美国在亚洲的利益和世界的利益和中美关系影响深远。这个问题，请半农先生来谈谈看法。
So today, for this presidential bidding, that is actually creating a great impact of Taiwan's future direction, and then it will impact on the U.S. Strategy on Asia, on the world, and also that with the U.S.-Sino trade relationship. So for this matter, I would now hand the time to Mr. Bannon.
Well, I want to say first, and we're going to be iterative on the show today to go back and forth, but first I want to thank everybody to join us. It's Holy Saturday here in New York City, and we're at the new studio, and it's raining very hard outside, right? So it's a good day. It's a good day for us to be broadcasting indoors instead of outdoors.
那么呢，今天呢，我相信我是跟文贵呢将会是呢有来有往的来到呢做出这个的对话的。但是呢，我非常的高兴能够在此呢再跟文贵在这里来到跟各位的观众是见面的。我们今天呢是美国的一个的复活节前天，那么而且呢是一个的假期。可是呢，我们在这里呢非常的高兴是跟各位是来到做这个的直播的。
One thing people should know before we get into the details of Taiwan and talk about Taiwan, I want to talk about the video you just saw. And one of the, I'm sorry.
谈完前呢，我们首先是谈一谈刚刚我们看到文贵的这个视频。
It's one of the reasons I've really enjoyed meeting Miles and working with Miles over the last year or so is really encapsulated in that video.
其实啊，我可以告诉大家呢，我过去的1年多，就是跟文贵的这个的学习了，还有是跟他来到谈话呢。其实我为什么会那么愿意是跟他来到呢做有这个的交往，还有是建立一个好朋友关系，就是因为我最欣赏的，刚刚在视频当中都看到了他的一个的特性。
Those of you that are watching in mainland China this evening, or watching in Hong Kong, or watching in Taiwan, you have to understand one thing, is that this week, the announcement that Terry Guo, the chairman and CEO of Foxconn, was inspired to run for president of Taiwan, caught the whole Western world in this complete shock, right? It's been this huge news story. The entire, kind of the firestorm coming out of this complete shock. All the geniuses in the foreign policy establishment, in Washington, D.C., in New York, in London, throughout Europe, even in Japan and some parts of Australia, the whole West is like completely in shock that Terry Guo is going to run for president of Taiwan.
大家呢，在香港啊，中港台的大家呢，可能都不太了解。其实啊，郭台铭宣布要竞选总统呢，其实在我们西方的世界来说呢，是造成很大的这个的震惊的。比如说呀，我们在华盛顿啊、纽约呀、伦敦啊、欧洲、日本、澳大利亚，大家很多的那一些政治天才都根本不可以相信这个郭台铭会宣布来到竞选这个总统的。
And as soon as it came out, it became such a huge story over here. Miles reminded me that last September, right, when I was very focused on the 2018 midterm elections, which were so important to President Trump, as we discussed, it flipped the House of Representatives over to the Democrats. We're going to get to that later in the show. Miles reminded me that on one of his broadcasts, he actually had gone through this and said this was actually going to happen.
那你知道然后呢，我们今天看到了，就是呢，文贵在去年的9月份的时候做了这个的视频，你知道。去年9月份的时候，我在做什么事情呢？我当时还是呢非常的这个的专注来到为做出这个的特朗普总统中期选举的一些的研究。那么，但是呢，当时呢，那个的时候我们整个的国会呢就被民主党就是进驻，那么就把整个的一个的政治的形势呢是改变过来了。但是你知道，在那个时候大家都没有注意的时候，文贵已经是说了。要今天会发生的这个的事情。
And this is why whatever I'm doing on the Rule of Law Fund or whatever I'm doing on the Committee of Present Danger or the other things I'm working on, I always try to arrange my schedule so I can be up here for the Saturday broadcast.
就是因为他有这一种的先见之明啊，所以的话呢，无论我是来到干这一个的法治基金的事情呀，又或者是当委员的事情呢，我都非常愿意。来到呢，把我的时间贡献给跟文贵来到做这个的直播的。
See what Miles has been able to provide to Westerners. It's not like a Henry Kissinger or some professor or one of these American or British or people talking about China for the first time, really the first time in the West. We have an individual who really understands what the game is, who really at a very deep level understands what's going on and can explain that. And I think, leaving even Taiwan aside, that broadcast in September is so important because I think you see why Miles is having such a big impact in the West and why so many people are not just watching this broadcast, but when he says something, the Western papers pick it up, and it's because he has a very sophisticated and deep understanding of what's going on, not just in China, but in the rest of Asia. And that's the first time we've had that. We've had many Westerners that have tried to explain that to us. People like Dr. Kissinger, other people, Orville Schell, all these very smart people who have lived in China, but they're Americans or they're British or they are European. And they haven't really, we've now for the first time, we really have somebody that can sit there and 6 months before an event happens, go, hey, this is actually what's going to happen. And it's very refreshing. And I think that's what's led to so many big changes so far. And I think this is going to have a huge impact in the future.
那么其实我们看到的是什么事情呢？就是说是你看到在我们今天郭台铭宣布要竞选总统的前的6个月的时候，文贵已经是在视频当中说出了这个今天6个月后我们要看到要发生的事情。你知道他就是代表了一点，就是为什么我非常的愿意要跟他来这做这个的直播。我非常相信他说的话呢，就是因为他对于中国这个的政治的情况，还有他们的战略有非常的深入的了解，他能够是看得非常的清楚，还这个的有先见之明，还在没发生前已经可以预测得到将来他们要做的、要部署的、要做的一些的战略。这个呢是从来没有发生过的事情。比如说我们在西方的社会，我们有很多的这一些的中国了解中国情况的一些的专家，比如说是基辛格的博士呀，又或者是在伦敦啊、英国呀各方面都有很多的这个的中国的专家，但是他们并没有能够像是文贵一样的那么深入了解知道中国的一些的战略的情况。所以的话呢，我觉得我是跟他学习了很多，而且的话呢，我非常愿意再跟他来到学习的。
So I'd like to, in one of the kickoffs, what I'd like to do, because people that are watching this in mainland China tonight, the patriots in mainland China that are watching this broadcast, and in Hong Kong and in Taiwan, should also understand that many, many Westerners watch this when it's put up on the Globe Media site. And so, Miles, I'd like to start off by saying, how did you know that back in September? What was it in September, since this caught all the geniuses here in the United States and at the State Department and at the Defense Department and in London and in Europe, all the newspapers, the Times of London, the Financial Times, everybody's in shock that Terry Groves, announcing that he's been inspired by a dream he had, that a goddess came to him and inspired him to come forward for his country, for the Taiwan people, and to run. What was it about the situation in Taiwan? What was it about the situation in Asia with the CCP and specifically with Terry Groves that made you say that in September? And can you kind of unpack that a bit? What brought you to say that, and what were you trying to get across at that time?
那么呢，首先文贵我就想要问你啊，就是说是，其实啊，6个月前，在去年的9月份的时候，其实当时发生了什么事情，会让你有这种的感觉，会看得出来，就是说是呢，郭台铭将会要做出这个的总统的竞选呢？因为那个的时候，大家都没有注意到这个人，没有人会预先的看得出来他会有这一种的举措的。西方的媒体、伦敦、华盛顿这一些的中国的天才们都没有人会预测到这一步。为什么突然间郭台铭说我受到那个马祖做一个的马祖的梦，那启发他让他来到竞选总统？那但是你去年9月份的时候已经是知道这个事情，为什么会让你会知道有这个事情呢？
班农先生这个问题非常好啊！我先简单的说一下呢，就是说我们对台湾的政治，我和班农先生肯定没有台湾人知道，但是基于郭台铭先生在大陆长期投资，他和官员的来往当中很多是我的朋友，他曾经交的女朋友是我的好姐妹儿啊，他所有的生意伙伴当中很多是我的朋友，特别是我跟他有一些很重要的事情发生，所以说我在有时候判断啊，你先翻译。
So a lot of things, of course, that even Taiwan people would not have known. But the thing is that you see, I have my observation for a long time about Terry Gou. And the thing is that not only Terry Gou himself, and then his relationship with China have been developed for such a long time. You see, a lot of his friends were my friends. A lot of his business partners were my friends. His girlfriends were also my good friend. And then, in fact, that between Terry and myself, there were some important affairs that happened during the years, in the course of years. So that is why that it triggered a thought in my mind.
我举2个小例子给大家来分享一下啊，这是我了解他必须作为2020年参选总统的一个基本的判断的一个情报。我先分享第一个信息。
So there are 2 small examples that I can actually share with you that why that it would make me think that he is going to make his presidential bid for the 2020 office. So I'm going to share these 2 examples with you.
我和现在的中央的一个领导人在一起啊，叫这个见面的时候啊，突然间啊就说，哎，文贵你可以离开了啊，我要有人要见啊。原来是郭台铭，这个领导人和郭台铭能见面，私下见面这样的情况，后来我了解到很多很多。那么当时在场的一个人说，郭台铭就是我们下一个培养的台湾总统。
So you see, there was a time that I met with a senior leader, or a central senior leader. But at one point, this leader said to me, "Oh, Miles, you need to leave. I have other important meetings." And then later I found out that he was meeting with Terry Gou. The thing is that I also found out that such meeting between the senior leader and Terry Gou had happened multiple times, many times. And I was also told that at some point that he is going to be nurtured to become the future president of Taiwan.
第2个呢，故事是，郭台铭先生在深圳遇到了巨大的这个问题的时候，他几十万的工厂，很多员工跳楼自杀事件发生以后，迅速的在几个月的时间，就把他的大部分工厂搬到了我投资的最重要的河南郑州市啊这个老机场的地方啊，并开始全面运作。
The second thing a certain time, Terry Gold's factories, Foxconn factory in Shenzhen, it was involved with these great scandals because many of his employees were committed suicide jumping off from the building, right? And then he has so many factories and involving with like millions and millions of dollars. And it was a great scandal. It was causing a lot of media report, and it was a great problem for him as well. Now, but in a very short period of time, just a few months, he was able to mobilize all the factory and moving them to Henan, Zhengzhou province, and that is where I was, invested as well. The most important area at the area, and then he removed and established his factories over there in just a very short period of time.
这个项目的整个的由河南的省委书记和当时郑州的岳文海，就是过去说的该支持该可和，啥事不往心里搁。这个哥们儿岳文海他来主导落实的。那么整个项目的指挥者全是中国军方和中共中央情报部门全面的专案组在当地督促落实，这是一个商人永远无法得到的在中国的资源，由军方、情报、地方首长以最短的时间几十万人的工厂建立并开始生产，这是天下的奇迹。只有一个力量，那就是中共的政治力量。
You see that in such a short time, that he was able to reestablish his factory, which have the populations of hundreds of thousands of people working in there, in Zhengzhou, Henan, this area. Now, that kind of a capability is not just a merchant, or it's not just a businessman that can actually do that, because he will require the approval of the provincial governor of Zhengzhou province. And then also that I know that that kind of mobility and that kind of scales of work would involve with the military power and also the central intelligence power. And in fact that they have established a special task force to just help him to remove those factories and relocate it into Zhengzhou and then reestablish the operation in such a short period of time. Without those departments and without those powers and forces behind, that cannot be done. And so that would be a miracle. So that is why that I think that that is why I know that he is a significant point.
第三个是他的有一位女朋友是香港的超级明星，是我多年的姐妹好朋友我跟她没有男女关系。这个给我讲述了郭台铭和他谈恋爱期间他的一些言语还有他的一些和中共的联系包括他未来的抱负很清楚，他要选总统，很明确他的一些个人生活，包括他的一些朋友的了解那个时候他已经很明确基于以上个人的和他发生的事实和他和中共领导的关系，那么后来内部人在告诉我说，中共培养几个人叫集体作战，联合面对民进党就是说通过选举拿下台湾，拿下台湾就等于拿下了亚洲，拿下了亚洲就基本上控制了世界。
And also the third thing I can also disclose a little bit is that you see a long-term girlfriend of Terry Guo, who's a superstar in Hong Kong, who's also a very good friend of mine for many years. And the thing is that from the conversation I have with her, and then so that she sometimes has disclosed that perhaps that in the conversation of a Terry Guo and his personal relationship and the way that he says things so together with in the past that I knew that he had this close relationship with central leaders, senior leaders of the Chinese government. And then also I know that the things that happened with the Foxconn, that in such a short period of time that he was able to reestablish into a brand new region, and also the internal people disclosing some of the information that he is a target person that to be developed for the future of Taiwan. So of all that, I know that there is coming to a point, the most optimal time for him to make his presidential bid. And you see that is actually have great impact on Asia and the relationship of Taiwan and China and Asia and to the world as well.
Leave it to Miles always to talk to the girlfriend.
对啊，就是说是你看，文慧总是要跟女朋友说话的。
等一等啊，班农先生今天发现有啥变化了吗？
This is the way the world really works. Always talk to the girlfriend.
对，
班农先生上次和今天瘦了12磅，我要输钱了。因为什么？因为他有了女朋友。
You see, the thing is that I'm losing my bet with Mr. Bannon. You see, from this time to the last time, I see that Mr. Bannon has lost 12 pounds of weight.
我过去我只羡慕他的头发和他的脸，现在我羡慕他有个更漂亮的女朋友。
And then also that I love his hair, and then I love that he is losing weight. And then you know why though? Because he has a new girlfriend, I am sure.
No, I'm married to my work. I want to go back though for a second. It's very important. We're going to get into the importance of Taiwan, the whole region. What was it though, Miles, in September, almost 2 years before this election? We're going to talk later in the show about how important the election is Taiwan, even in the American presidential election. Remember, keep in mind, I believe that the Taiwan presidential election will take place in January of 2020, which will really be just a few weeks before the Iowa caucus, a few weeks before New Hampshire, a few weeks before California, South Carolina. This entire intensity of the coming presidential race, which we're already starting to get revved up to. We're going to talk later about the Mueller report. But remember, the election in Taiwan will happen in January of 2020.
但是啊，我就说呀，你知道这个的台湾总统大选将是要在2020年1月份发生的啊，就是说是在2年前的2018年的9月份，在那个的时候，你就已经是可以知道这个郭台铭将要是在2020年的时候竞选这个总统。为什么特别会是在？我知道你就是说是那个的郭台铭是要被培养，要成为是那个的台湾总统的，但是为什么特别会在2018年9月份？2年前你就会说出在下一届的总统就是郭台铭，是不是什么是让你知道就是在那个的时候要说这话
？Yeah, please.
I want to finish just for a second. Just as Brexit was the forerunner of the Trump in 2016. Brexit happened in June. The Trump election shocked everybody. Happened in November, and I have posited that this coming year in 2020 for the next election cycle, the Taiwan election will essentially be like the vote in England. It will be a precursor, because one of the central issues in the 2020 campaign will be the West engagement with the CCP and what the CCP is doing to enslave the Chinese people. This will be a central issue of the American campaign. The election for the president of Taiwan will literally happen at the very beginning of that entire the process for selecting the Democratic candidate in the preliminaries work as people run to get the nomination, and so this will be a huge event that will happen in January 2020.
对我再要说的话呢，就是说是因为我知道，那么这个你要知道呢，这个的总统大选，其实对于中共来说是一个的非常重要的一个的事情。那么其实呢，西方也是非常的重视这一个的总统大选的事情，因为他们将要是看到是有什么人将会是成为这个大选当中的竞选的这个的人，那么他们才知道中共将是对支持什么的人。那么也影响到是西方我们的政治的一些的人呐、政客呀、政府如何来到去支持一些的台湾民主的发展的一个的情况，他们将要知道是中共是支持什么人，什么人可以是成为民进党的一些的这个的人选来到竞选，来到做出这个的大选，这个的总统的大选的一个的竞争的对手。所以的话，我觉得这个是非常的重要，是影响到我们西方如何来到处理我们的这个的参与性。
So Miles, back in September of almost 2 years or 18 months before the election, What was it that caused you to make this prediction that now has come true?
那么，所以我就再一次的问一下，就是说是文贵啊，在2年前9月份的时候，你怎么会知道已经是有这种的先知，可以预见到郭台铭将要是宣布来到竞选总统呢？
说起来很长，但是呢，我用最简单的办法、最简单的答案来告诉大家。
It could be a long story, but I'll do it very briefly. That I can tell you very briefly about this.
台湾的政治家和西方的政治家，所有的人啊，看待共产党的问题上，啊，完全是用自己的标准去看，这绝对是错的。
You see, the thing is that there is one fundamental mistake of the politicians in Taiwan and the rest of the Western world that had made when they were looking upon CCP or analyzing the strategies of CCP.
看共产党的事情的决定就2条：看他的女人，看他的钱，就能看出共产党他在干什么，他了解他全部真相。
You see, the thing is that when we need to actually understand the strategies of the CCP, then we need to look at some of the people, when we're looking at their pawns, then we look at the girlfriends of the pawn, and then the money traces of the pawn. Then we understand exactly where the CCP is heading towards.
再一个就是共产党的，就是他这领导啊，他们的这个情报没有什么保密的。美国人和台湾人太看得起共产党了，他们没有秘密啊，所以说他们所有身边人跟我有联系的，我只要跟他有上几简单的了解和探视，比如说郭台铭，我和一个中共的国安委的人我说，台湾柯文哲在选举啊。柯文哲呼声很高，有台湾有选总统的可能。我说你们是不是选柯文哲？说怎么轮得着他呢？咱们的大老板早就有安排了，怎么可能是他？这得有一个联美联台，还有一个美国能支持川普，咱在台湾得弄个川普。我就知道台湾能当川普的就是郭台铭，所以基于此判断啊，后来我在多方验证，加他女朋友过去的信息，加我过去对他的了解。啊，柯文哲，还有当时我就知道这个韩文瑜，还有一个这个赖清德，这个当时要选举朱立伦和中国没有关系，赖清德和中国肯定是他是台独有台独倾向的，韩国瑜是他的2杆枪之一，所以一定是郭台铭，这就是基本的判断，这就是看待共产党这最好的办法，情报加上他的理论分析，加上看出他的本质。
You see that to understand CCP is really quite simple. You know, the rest of the world had overestimated the intelligence prowess of the CCP. You see, the thing is that they don't really have secret. They don't really keep a secret either. You see, if I want to know something, I just chat with some guy in the National Securities Committee. And then I may be saying that, oh, what do you think about, you know, the Terry Gou? Do you think that what do you think about this guy that who so-and-so? He might be having a chance to run the president a campaign for Taiwan next time. And that person may just say to me that, why would that be his turn? You know, China has already put their stake on someone, and then that someone is just like Donald Trump in the US. He has been developed for many years, and then over the years, you know, the time is coming, the time is right. So you see, based on that, right, based on that kind of a short disclosure, then I make my own analysis. I am aware that in Taiwan, who can actually be as successful or as Donald Trump in the US. In Taiwan, there is only one person, and that is Foxconn's Terry Gou. And then also, you see, at the time, there were other people running for the president proportionately as well. That is Lai Ching-te and Han Kuo-yu and several others. But based on my analysis, Han Kuo-yu would be the double gun strategy. So it is either Guo or Han. And then the other ones, I don't think that they have a chance. And so that is why, and then also with my conversation with Terry Gou's girlfriend, and then understanding a lot of the other things and making this kind of a circumstantial analysis, I deduce that at the end, that only Guo Taiming and Terry Gou, that is Terry Gou, would be the candidate and that pinpoint by the CCP to bid the next president's office of Taiwan.
Why is, in particular for the Westerners that are going to watch this broadcast later, why is Taiwan, in your mind, Miles, why is it such a big focus of the CCP? Why is it so important, given its size? Why do you think it's so important throughout Asia? Why has this election gotten so much of your attention and now starting to get the world's attention?
那文贵啊，就是为了让我们稍后一些的西方的人士观看的时候更加了解台湾这个的情况，我有这个问题希望是问你的，就是说是台湾是一个非常细小的一个的岛屿，为什么中共会对它那么高度的注意，要必定的让下那一些的总统的人选是他们指定的一些的人选，而且他当选了，用他自己指定的这个的人当选了台湾总统以后，对世界有哪一些的影响？是否可以跟我们谈一下呢？
我最简单的个例子来说明他对中共有多重要啊。
I would just use a very small examples to illustrate why the importance of Taiwan to CCP.
班农先生现在背后是一面墙，已经牢固了什么俄罗斯和阿塞拜疆，也就是中国的背部，包括北朝鲜，没有什么威胁。那么它的前面、左边和右边是他最要关注的啊。
So you see, we are using Mr. Bannon's background and his surrounding as an example. Now, the back wall of Mr. Bannon at the moment is completely blank. Right, but the thing is that it is that means that is like a Russian area, Azerbaijan area, North Korean area. So that is not exactly posing any particular threat at the moment. But then there are other threats around him and in front of him.
他的正前方南海，中国南海，他已经是在过去这些年已经彻底控制了菲律宾海、南海彻底控制了，出海南侧已经没有问题了。对待中国的战略岛链，第一岛链的第二岛链第一个口子已经彻底撕开了，啊。
So you see, to the front of Mr. Bannon, that will be the South Sea. You see, South Sea is not going to be an issue for China anymore because you see, China had already completely controlling the South Sea area, and they have already deployed all kinds of measures in guarding it with the Philippines and all sorts of things.
在整个的南海的这边的整个印度洋和马六甲唯一最重要的战略资源的通道，就是“一带一路”啊，海上之路，86%的能源的供应量连接了中东和非洲。那么这个和这个俄罗斯以及巴基斯坦和西部山脉啊，这个“一带一路”已经彻底连在一起，所以它要进军中东，进军非洲。这个战略已经彻底的成功了啊。
And then also that on the left side of the front, we can imagine that is the Indian Ocean area and the Malacca Strait. So you see that is the crucial route of the Belt and Road Initiative. And with this route, China can get into African area, continent, and then also the Middle East region. And also that would ensure 80% of the energy supply of China. And that strategy and that kind of a deployment had already established and successful.
所以说，他现在的整个东海和台湾海峡，咱就所说的，是他的潜水艇、军队，以及和日本的较量当中，包括军事战略位置当中，你是从海军出来的。这个战略的位置，如果他拿不下的话，他等于失去了他的，就班农先生的后边安全了，麦奥斯国安全了啊，就是“一带一路”永远安全了，前面啊范姨奶奶这儿也安全了，但是他的左边有一个出门口，王艳平在那儿站着呢啊，还有几个保镖拎着枪，班农先生出不出去，班农先生唯一能在这吴先生走出去的，唯一的必须干掉王艳平，也就是台湾。知道吗？门给你把着呢，海下之门，海上之门。台湾这个岛是整个掐在了共产党脖子上的一个最重要的一双手，所以拿下台湾，他才能控制，从军事上控制了亚洲啊。我先说军事方面。
So that you see that, but then the only opening that can pose any threat to China will be on, Mr. Bannon, your left side. Because China basically had already controlled all of your, and then had the alliances built at your back with Russia and Azerbaijan and the North Korean area. And then on your left, and they're using the Belt and Road Initiative, they also form alliances, and then also they're gaining a lot of the access to Africa and Middle East, and they have no worry about that, and the Philippines and the South Sea, right? But then to your right, to your left, that is the Taiwan Strait. Now, the thing is that is also the EC area. So if China is not able to gain absolute control of that area, basically that would be like it is also having this challenge from the Japan area, and that is why that they need to build the Navy to guard this area, and then also that militarily they would need to be able to establish a stable and then reliable gateway, so that they will be in complete control of that area. So militarily, they need to be 100% gaining control. And Taiwan is at that location. If China is not able to gain the absolute control of Taiwan, it is actually like a knife posing at the neck, so that it is of imminent threat to it.
所以说，这是军事上必须的，他要走出亚洲。他现在拿到台湾，就让亚洲证明我可以控制亚洲了。因为台湾的经济、技术、人口、地理位置，它就真的是代表亚洲。你连台湾都做不到，怎么可能征服亚洲呢？拿到台湾，日本在台湾在亚洲就被踢出去了。征服和控制了亚洲，它就等于是在整个马六甲海峡能源领域也控制了日本。日本的能源战略也被卡住了，亚洲人没有人再敢跟中国挑战的，在跟共产党，基本上他就等于征服了世界的第一步成功了。
So that you see that that is a military strategy. So you see, Taiwan is very established and mature in this technology. And then the population is very good quality. And then also the economy is a very affluent area. So that you see, using Taiwan and then China setting up the military gateway, and it is in control of the entire Asian region. And then also that to control of the Taiwan Strait, basically it is in control of all the energy supply route to Japan as well. And then Japan will not be able to challenge China anymore. So in control of the Taiwan Strait, that is in control of the EC, in control of the entire Taiwan area, that is militarily, that is already able to basically control the entire Asian region. And there is no Asian areas of countries will be able to actually stand up to China anymore. And that is basically realize the conquering of the world, the dream of conquering the world of China, and that is the first step, that it is if it is successful in gaining its absolute control of Taiwan.
You think, so you're positing that the control of Taiwan basically essentially makes China a hegemonic power in East Asia, in that part of the Western Pacific, that they then can push forward with their plan for hegemonic or world domination after that.
那你的意思就是说，是如果是中国是能够呢是掌控这个的台湾的话，就是相等于它能够是掌控着东亚地区以及是西太平洋的地区，那就是实现他们是这个统治世界的一个的第一步，是这个意思吗
？Yes.
Yes.
是的。
One last thing before, because I want to drill down on your concept of Terry Guo as Donald Trump. Before we get that, can the CCP continue to allow places like Taiwan and Hong Kong to continue to thrive without their direct control? Because it's an example, not just to the world, but to the Chinese people on the mainland, of how successful, with very limited resources, because Taiwan and Hong Kong basically have very limited natural resources. With limited resources, if you give the Chinese people freedom, if you give them freedom of thought, you give them freedom of speech, you give them freedom of religion, you give them capitalism, the Chinese people will thrive like no people on earth. Is that example of Taiwan, the success of Taiwan and Hong Kong, is that a problem for the CCP?
那么我想这一个的问题啊，就是说是中共如果不对台湾或者是香港这两个地方实施绝对的掌控，你觉得小地方如台湾跟香港能够繁荣，能够是可以这个的自治吗？因为你知道台湾跟香港都是两个是非常的小的地方，而且呢，他们自己可以说是没有非常有限的这个的资源的。那么，如果中国不会支持他们，不掌控着他们，不管理着他们，他们能够自治吗？他们能够是繁荣吗？他们能够是有这个的有自由吗？你觉得是怎么样呢？
这个班农先生，我相信我理解的，刚才翻译上可能是因为你是口语翻译，他就是说的，就是没有共产党的统治，没有共产党的这个领导之下，台湾、香港是否能自由、能繁荣？用台湾的历史和香港的历史啊，绝对可以证明，台湾和香港中国的人种没问题，可以依法，可以拥有法治，也可以拥有自由和民主啊。那么台湾和香港人民也证明了，他们没有共产党的统治和领导，会过得繁荣富强，而且精神愉悦啊，这是没有任何问题的。恰恰的相反，共产党要统治台湾和香港，那将走上人道灾难之路。共产党的扩张是一个独裁体制的扩张，共产党是要挑战美国和西方的民主体制，他要把独裁体制领导世界，而不是用自由民主领导世界。那跟台湾和香港今天人民的生活方式那是敌对的。所以台湾和香港人民只有两个选择，一个继续回去100年前当奴才，一个是当30年前的台湾和香港自由法治。
You see, the thing is that I believe that without the governing and without the ruling of the CCP, Taiwan and Hong Kong can remain to be democratic, can enjoy freedom, can enjoy prosperity. And in fact, that with the ruling of the CCP, perhaps that will push these two places into the opposite direction, because you see, CCP's ruling is actually a humanitarian disaster. It is a dictatorship. It is a totalitarian government. So that when it's gaining control of these two places, it's going to destroy its democracy, its freedom, its prosperity. So for Taiwan and Hong Kong, they have no choice. Actually, they have two choices. One is to choose that whether they go back to 100 years ago, being enslaved, and then living in enslavement for a country, or that they can go back to 30 years ago, 40 years ago, without the ruling of a totalitarian government, and enjoy its democracy and freedom and prosperity.
所以说，我说郭台铭这个选举，他是一个帮助共产党偷走了苹果，帮助华为偷走了西方的技术的一个商业小偷。我可以证明他说，郭台铭，你要不信，你可以挑战我来。他现在要偷走台湾人的未来，现在要出卖美国在世界的利益。班农先生，你们要知道这个。
So I need Mr. Bannon and the rest of the world know that in fact Terry Guo, he was a thief. You see, he had already helped China to steal technologies from Apple, and then he had helped Huawei to steal technologies from the US. So the thing is that, are we going to allow him to steal the future of Taiwan, selling out the US benefits and interests to China?
The question I think a lot of people have, first off, Miles, when you made we'll get to this in a second, but when you made that analogy between Trump and Terry Gou, can he even give up the control of Foxconn? Because he's built Foxconn, and we'll get into that in a second about how he built it, but he's built Foxconn to be one of the largest manufacturing companies in the world, right? Over $100 billion of revenue. It does, an enormous amount. I think it does virtually all the iPhones. It's a massive manufacturing, and he's a very hands-on manager. People would say he's not just detail-oriented, but in the West we call them control freaks. He's very engaged in the day-to-day operations of this massive empire of Foxconn. I mean, given your name, is it even practical for him to run for president of Taiwan, given the fact that is he somebody that can actually turn over the control of Foxconn to his managers, because it doesn't seem like they've groomed a CEO or chairman that's at his stature.
那文贵，我还有一个问题呢，就是相关于这个的郭台铭，这个的郭台铭呢，人家就把他就是跟那个的特朗普来到相比的，就是说是他是台湾的特朗普，所以他就是要像特朗普一样的去竞选这个的总统啊。但是我想问的是，因为呢，郭台铭呢，他是创造了这个的富士康这个的很大规模的一个的制造商，他是为苹果制造全球的他的这个的 iPhone。它有这个的1000亿的这美元的一个的收入，那么而且呢，它也是一个的做很大规模的一个的制造商。那么而且呢，我们也知道郭台铭呢是积极的参与他一个的富士康的这个的日常的一个的运作的，他就是每事都管，人家都说他可能是一个的有管制有管理的一个的狂人。就是说是他不放手的，也不会让他周边的那一些的 CEO 啊、经理们啊来到帮助他。他呢也没有是来到培训他的这些 CEO 成为他的继任人。那你觉得，如果他走出来就是竞选这个下届的总统的时候，台湾总统，你觉得他会放手让别的人来到管理富士康吗？他还是会自己掌控这富士康的这个的操作呢？
这里面有2个问题啊。郭台铭先生，据我所了解，是一个控制狂，他不叫管理狂，是控制狂。那么他和马云2个人啊，都有一个鲜明的特征，他绝对是华人当中成功的佼佼者。但是他的成功不是出于他的智慧，是出于他一种变态啊。这个郭台铭非常会玩政治，他把大陆的政治是玩到家了，他的成功的要素在这儿。这个玩政治，马云也是玩政治，但俩人就是马云是撒谎狂，这个郭台铭是这个控制狂，但两狂还有加上一个最大的天赋玩政治，这是他成功的第一个原因啊。
So there are two things. There are two things I can tell. Is that you see, we must admit that Terry Guo was a very successful entrepreneur, and then he is an extremely successful businessman, just like Jack Ma in Alibaba in China. We must admit that. And then these two were the tycoons and the billionaires. Now, but the thing is that Terry Guo's being successful is because that not he is a genius or anything, but the thing is that he is quite perverted because that he is an extreme control freak. And then he is also a very, very good politician. He understands deeply and thoroughly about China's politics. That is why that he is successful. Now, it's the same thing like Jack Ma. He is not a control freak, but he is a lying freak. So that, and then also he's very successful in politics because he knows the politics as well. That is why that these two people were successful in China.
Please.
No.
我说刚才他那个，就是他选这个总统啊，他不会放弃他企业的，他不放弃他的企业，怎么能同时又能把台湾送给共产党？他想通过选举台湾的总统来和共产党做更大的交易啊，玩过最多的明星，玩过最大的共产党，再玩一个台湾总统，他想在这个中搞平衡，不可能的，结果就是牺牲2300万台湾人民。结局是悲惨的，他本人也会从此。郭台铭从选举那一天开始起，郭台铭的人生已经结束了，咱们走着瞧，他不会再有任何往上好的时候，越来越糟，企业糟，身体糟，名义糟，然后他彻底失败，大家可以拭目以待。跟共产党的没有好结果。
I can tell you that. You see, the thing is that Terry Guo will not give up his control of Foxconn. That is definitely, that is a surety. So the thing is that how can he even maintain that the control of Foxconn and still running the president and be the president of Taiwan. It is really quite impossible. So basically, what his idea is that, first of all, he has all the movie stars because he's wealthy, he had all the movie stars, and then he wanted to actually have CCP in his palm. And then so that now that he had he has the back of the CCP, so he now wanted to become the president of Taiwan. So basically, he run the president. When he's the president of Taiwan, he is able to hand Taiwan all together to the CCP. And then so the CCP will have the absolute control of the Taiwan. Now that is his ploy. But the thing is that he won't be able to do anything with that, or doing anything of the benefit of Taiwan or of interest of Taiwan. So if he gets to be the president of Taiwan, that is a tragedy for himself and for Taiwan. Basically, he has given Taiwan to China. But at the same time, though, I can posit this, I can even predict this, is that once he gets to be starting from the day that he's running for the president's office, his entire career is heading to an end. His physical strength, his physical condition is going downhill, his business is going downhill, his reputation will be destroyed. Basically, his life is ending.
Why do you say that? Because, and we'll talk in a second about how he actually built his business in mainland China with the Taiwan banks and in coordination with the Chinese government. But, Terry Gou did say that he was inspired to do this, Miles, because in a dream, the goddess Mazu came to him and said that he should, for the youth, for the economy, and I think for peace, cross-channel peace, that it was his time to run. And I will say, in today's world, where you have figures like President Xi, Wang Qishan, Erdogan in Turkey, Mohammed bin Zayed in UAE, El Sisi in Egypt, Salvini in Italy, Orban in Hungary, Putin in Russia, Trump in the United States of America, Bolsonaro in Brazil, people like Pope Francis as Pope. It's a time, it seems like in world history, that these big personalities are now coming to the forefront from business and from other areas to run, governments and to be major players on the world stage. And I think in September, what you were saying is that Terry Gou is a personality like this, in an era where Donald Trumps are being raised up and taking actual active in politics, where you have Putin in Russia and you have Bolsonaro and you have these big personalities are now on the world stage, Pope Francis with the Catholic Church, that it's time, that's what, in the world, the way the media works and the way people's attention work and the internet works, that the Terry Gou has come forward. Now, Terry Gou has said that he was inspired by, he had a vision that the goddess Mazu came to him in a vision and told him, for the good of the youth, for the good of the economy, and for the good of what he called cross-channel peace and harmony, that now was his time to leave his business behind and to actually seek the presidency of Taiwan for the good of the nation.
那当然，我就想问一下呢，你是怎么看这个事情呢？比如说是现在在世界的政治上有很多的非常强的一个的领导者，比如说是你看我们有那个的梵蒂冈的这个的Pope Francis， 也有这个的土耳其的 Erdogan， 也有那个的意大利的 Salvini， 也有这个的沙地的那个的 MBS。然后呢，也有这个的习近平、王岐山这一些的非常还有就是俄罗斯的这个的普京，那么这些呢都是非常这个的有力量的这一些的独裁的这一些的领导。但是同时间呢，我们也看到有一些的好像是特朗普那样的，通过这个的从民间冒起来的有一些的媒体支持，来到呢获得他们的这个的竞选胜利的这一些的一个的领导。那我就觉得好像是那个的郭台铭，也好像是特朗普一样吧。那么他说我做过一个的梦，那么马祖来到告诉我， 是如果呢我能够是去竞选这个的台湾总统的话呢，我可以是帮助两岸达到和平，而且也可以帮助促进这个台湾的经济繁荣等等。那你觉得你怎么看这个的事情呢？
我觉得班农先生是伟大的，我见过啊，真正的伟大的是国际政治家啊，发自内心的啊。
Okay, I think that Mr. Bannon is really a great international politician, a politic strategist.
我在我在家里休息那个21天守孝的21天，我把班农先生这些所有的他的演讲我几乎全看完了啊。
You see that while I was at home at a time that when I was in the morning, that I actually watched all of the speeches made by Mr. Bannon over the years.
这个我对班农先生的国际战略，我真的五体投地的佩服啊。
I have to bow my head to you, to admire you about your vision and your views on the international politics.
我这种小儿科在他面前讲，实在是丢人现眼。但是我脸皮够厚，我就来回答我一些无知的想法啊，无知的看法。
So you see that I am to you a kindergartner. So the thing is, I am thick-skinned. So I am still quite willing to share my kindergartner's view to you as a giant.
今天的所有的这些强人阿尔多安啊，包括普京啊，包括今天的这个中国的习近平主席，还有王岐山，包括这个现在这些强人，包括 NBS 啊，这个非常感谢上天，绝大多数人我都认识，我也都见过。对待这些人呢，我认为他是个历史的必然产物啊，在人类的历史上总是起起伏伏啊，这都是正常的。
You see that you mentioned about these super powerful leaders, such as like Putin, such as Xi Jinping, Wang Qishan, MBS. Now, of course, their rising is a natural phenomenon of our history. Basically, we will see them from time to time. There are ups and downs in our history. So there are times that when we see these super political figures in our time.
那么现在世界上实际上出了两个半政治体系，两个很正常，强人和这个文人这个执政啊，管理国家，管理世界。那么过去从希特勒、斯大林啊，这个都看得很清楚啊，历史上一个个的强人啊，一直到现在，那这多了去了中国的秦始皇啊，人类到了最好的时代是到了华盛顿的时代。啊，华盛顿给人类带来了文明，包括英国啊，进入大宪章法律时代，这都是有文人和知识分子和将军人们的联合结果。那么就两种方式，一种就是以大家的智慧来治理国家，一个是独裁强人治理国家。现在又多了半个，商人也掺和进来了，是2.5方式治理世界。
So you see that we can see that in the world there are two and a half great leadership's power in governing our world, right? Now, even in the past, we see these super political figures rising up and then taking the world in their hand. In times such as in China, we have the Emperor Qin, Xin Ziwang, and then in the West, we see the time we had Hitler, we had Stalin. And today we have like super people, political figures like Putin and Xi Jinping, Wang Qishan, such people. That is the natural vicissitude of the world. Now the thing is that is one power, that is the absolute power, the dictatorship power. But another power is that will lead the world to a better place. When times like we see Washington, the founding fathers, and in England, at the time that when they established the Magna Carta, and that is the result of people's wisdom getting together, a collective wisdom, taking the country into their hand and take it to a better place. But then, of course, now that we have another 0.5 power, that is Mr. Bannon, and then bringing up the populism, and then say that is 2.5 power leading the world.
所以说，过去的县政制还是这个均县制， 这些已经都不重要了。说白了就是一人说了算，还是大家依法说了算。现在的共产党就是挑战世界，要推行全世界的一人独裁政治，挑战西方和人类上几千年现在形成的就是大家说了算的政治，那就是说法治政治。现在加入了半个商人，现在来呢也参与了这个搅局当中。我认为，我本人就是商人，商人执政是人类的危机不是希望。那么我认为人类唯一的走向的就是真正的宪政，大家还民主法治的社会这个民主咱们可以说有高有低但是法治是必须的，这是唯一的，根据人类的本性。但独裁必须是灭亡的，商人参政是危机宪政是未来，这个独裁是危险，必须干掉。
We, as I was saying, that we have this dictatorship that can rule the world. And then we have the collective power of people. Basically, that will become the rule of law. And then the rule of law, the democracy, and the people that can rule the world. And then we said that the 0.5, that is not the populism, that is actually merchants' power. We see that rising at the moment. They're demonstrating in a lot of corners of the world. And that, in fact, to me, merchants, businessmen ruling the world will bring us crisis. So to me, it's very simple. All this system, basically, as a result, is just either that we should be having rule of law, ruled by the people, democracy, or that ruled by one person, one ruling power, that is the dictatorship, the totalitarian. That is what manifested at the moment very prominently in China with the CCP and Xi Jinping government. And then the other would be the merchants, the businessmen, and that will bring us crisis. Dictatorship, totalitarian cannot be allowed, because that would really be a tragedy, and a danger to the world.
That form of, when you say businessman, this form of what I call state capitalism, which is big controlling government and big business getting together. And you see that in China today. And what we're trying to do is hopefully stop that from happening. It's starting to happen in the United States. It's happening in Europe. You see all over the world. This is, to me, the convergence of this form of state capitalism with big government that leads to corruption. Let's use Terry Gou as an example. Walk me through how he actually built. He is one of the world's, I don't think there's any doubt that he is one of the world's greatest examples of a CEO of a manufacturing business that's taken something from very small, I think it was a loan of $7,500, to a company that has, I think, over $160 billion of revenue, plants all over the world, massive manufacturing in China, one of the most sophisticated and smart and technologically cutting edge companies in the world, and really created it from nothing. So Terry Gou has, in modern advanced capitalism, proved that he is one of the, and he didn't need to go to Harvard Business School to get that. He did it on his own. That became one of the great manufacturers. However, how did he actually build this business? I mean, isn't this an example of state capitalism, using Taiwan banks to fund manufacturing growth in mainland China in cahoots with the CCP?
那其实你刚刚说这个的商人治国这一个的这一种的权利我其实就用另外一个的词来到说它，其实他们是一些的国家资本主义者来到呢是治国为什么我这样说呢？那么其实现在这个是中国提倡出来的一种的做法，就是说是国家的资本帮助商人来让他们发展，来到然后呢通过各种各样的腐败，然后来到治理国家获得国家的权利。那么我们看到这种的情况现在已经是延伸到呢美国、欧洲很多的地方，而且呢也是呢鼓励了一些的腐败的行为的出现。那么这个呢，其实我们是希望是可以来到呢打破这一种的这个的局面的。那么但是呢，这个我们先不说，我们来到说一下这个的郭台铭。郭台铭他是原来是一个的商人，他是从零开始，白手兴家 我听说好像是他从一个的75000块的一个的资本，就把这个的富士康发展到现在是一个的1600亿这个的一个的企业。他们现在掌控的技术也是全世界是最尖端的。那么而且的话，你看他还没有到过哈佛上学，他就是一个的普通人。那么从零开始白手兴家的，那我觉得他如何从零可以创造这样的一个的1000亿的一个的企业呢？他其实就是获得了台湾国家银行的一些的支持，而且呢，让他把资金带到去中国，也获得这个的中国政府国家的一个的支持，通过国家的资源让他来到发展，然后呢就是让他成为一个的领导，然后来到呢就是把国家的资源就是转让到别的国家，是这种的情况吗？
我觉得可能比班农先生想象的这个事情呢还是要严重的啊。我觉得他和马云呢是我们亚洲人当中表现出来的最好的一面，最坏的一面全在他们身上。我认为就像动物世界里面，就是那个蚊子啊，这个它非常聪明啊，它没盯在那些很烂的动物上，它盯在了那些最强大的动物上的蚊子，吸它们的血。我认为他们都是超级政治骗子、政治玩家。在台湾，在中国大陆，没有政治上的这个高端运作，几乎不可能成功。他们最聪明的就是，你看看郭台铭对这个民主，他说民主能当饭吃吗？民主能给你 GDP 吗？啊，他认为人民不值钱。郭台铭的发财是建立在穷苦老百姓身上的，是偷到了美国技术，他是美国技术的小偷啊。那么共产党也是偷到了美国的财富，偷取了中国人民的财富。马云也是偷走了多少年轻人的未来和生命，然后打着拯救世界的名义啊，实际是偷走了美国亚马逊的技术嘛，都是偷和骗，和共产党他这个执政体制是完全成为一体。所以今天是个悲哀，西方的世界所有的都是在以法以真啊来这个建立了人类的文明和财富，而共产党和郭台铭和马云这号人全部都是靠骗、靠关系、靠掠夺，但是现在要影响世界，你不觉得这是悲哀吗？而且是个大偷，没人管。
You see, the thing is that, Mr. Bannon, I think the reality perhaps is even more serious than what you just purported to be. You see that I think what we need to understand, Terry Gou and Jack Ma, are that these two are great entrepreneurs. We can see in them a very good side of a human being, but also a very bad side of the human being. You see, it's just like in the animal kingdom, mosquitoes, for example, they don't really suck the blood of ill people. They would choose the best people, the best blood, to suck the blood, to take the blood, so that enable themselves to be stronger and then to be better, right? So Terry Gou and Jack Ma is exactly like that. And they are the super political players, but at the same time, they are the deceptors as well. You see that the Terry Gou once said that, what is the worth of democracy? What kind of does it do anything for our GDP? So you see, the thing is that he fundamentally does not have any faith in democracy, have any faith in our civilization. And therefore that he can be just a thief, stealing the technologies of the West, and then stealing the wealth from the people, and then contribute them to the state of the CCP. And so that you see, taking the wealth and giving back to the CCP. And that's exactly also what Jack Ma was doing, right? Like Jack Ma, he stole the Amazon technology and then turned it into Alibaba's, and then stealing the people's wealth, and then sort of endangering so many people's lives. And yet, they are saying that we are actually saving the world. We are here for the good of people. And it is creating such kind of a grandiose illusion that people believe them. And the thing is that, you know what is even more ironic is that they are stealing, they are thieves, they are liars. And yet, you know what? they committed no crime. People don't think that they are doing anything criminal. People think that they are doing the great things. And then they are taking the wealth from the people and then creating, these are helping the dictatorship, and yet people think that they are doing the greatest thing. And people believe in them.
It's been reported widely, Miles, I'd love to get your take on it, that Terry Guo met with President Xi here not too long ago, and they actually talked about politics. Can you explain, can you take you down a deeper level, this two-gun strategy you talk about? Mm-hmm. Why would Xi meet with Terry Guo to talk about Taiwan politics? I mean, why would that happen? Why would President Xi, who's got enough on his mind, why would President Xi take time to meet with one of the world's top entrepreneurs who's running, one of the world's biggest, if not the world's biggest manufacturing, at least of technology company? Why would he meet with him to talk about politics in Taiwan? And how does that fold into this two-gun strategy that you started the show talking about?
好，那么文贵，我再问你一下啊，我知道呢，在最近的时候呢，郭台铭呢是跟习近平呢是见过面的，还是呢习近平要跟他见面，来到谈相关是台湾的政治的情况。你觉得为什么作为一个的国家的领导，他就是重要他的事太多了啊，还有那么繁忙，还有现在呢很多的事情要让他管啊，那么他现在也是很多的这个的头疼的事情啊，但是他竟然是有这个时间，可以去跟郭台铭一个的商人来到去见面，而且要谈政治，谈台湾。那你觉得其实这个是跟他们你刚开始的时候说过一个的双枪的一个策略，一个战略，是否有一个的这样的相关性呢？
班农先生看问题都看得很大的本质。那么中共啊，现在的战略双枪战略就是什么？一把郭台铭的枪，一把韩国瑜的枪，来对付你赖清德啊。朱立伦现在已经排不上了啊，那蔡英文也不行了。所以说两枪对付你一枪，我怎么都得赢啊！然后剩下那些人再想出来都不可能。他背后啊，他还隐藏一些小暗箭啊，那都是当他有觉得不占优势的时候，可以放暗箭，那是共产党的招。但两枪政策一定赢，这是我和班农先生这几天说，赖清德没有机会了啊，这个朱立伦也没有机会了啊，韩国瑜未来就是他的1、2把手组合，也可能一北一南，是共产党一定会成功。这是为什么啊？习主席会在北京见郭台铭，就是共产党的这个决策，他非常聪明，先要抓你的把柄，我给你钱，就叫蓝金黄，我先给你钱，然后呢，就是给了你黄啊，给了你金呐，给了你利益。这个郭台铭已经是杀了跳楼，很多事情都是给他利益、市场、免税啊，全国人民力量给他建厂啊，这已经是做到了。然后呢，再抓你的丑闻，他有很多跳楼死亡的人跟他有关系，也可能很多性的女工的问题、犯法的问题，抓住他的把柄，然后呢，掌握郭台铭所有的其他的信息，他已经牢牢的掌控他了。所以说，习才跟他见面，说你就是我的人了，你代表我吧，你去台湾去这个代表选举，把台湾给我弄回来。现在郭台铭是个世界上技术最大的盗窃犯。就为啥我老说他和马云在一起呢？他俩在川普总统在你老人家刚刚选完了就跑到美国来了，100万工作给川普给了吗？100亿美元投资给了吗？从100元到20亿，20亿到3亿美元，啊，这个马不来了。这俩人全是共产党的超级骗子、超级小偷、超级政治玩家。这就是您现在问的，为什么要见他？为什么达沃斯要捷克马去？这是共产党培养的枪。
You see that exactly. You see that very clearly. That is the double gun strategy. You see that between Guo Taiming, Terry Guo, and then Han Guoyu, that will be the two guns in the hands of the CCP. One is south, one is north. And then so with these two guns, they definitely can outbid Lai Ching-te, who's also a potential candidate running for the president's office. And definitely Zhu Liwen or Tsai Ing-wen, they are not going to have a chance, you see. So in the eyes of the CCP is Lai Ching-te, and so that they are utilizing the two guns, Guo Taiming and Han Kuo-yu, and basically they would eradicate any potential probability of Lai Ching-te to gain this presidential election. So you see, CCP is very clever. They have already totally controlling Guo Taiming through the BGI strategy. They have already given a lot of the interest to Guo Taiming. With the Foxconn, then they help it, and then relieving the currency's control, and then helping it to reestablish its factories. And at the same time, they would, of course, let him have a lot of women, a lot of girls, and then with that kind of thing, that they would get together a lot of evidence of his scandal, of his sexual conduct, and in fact, that they also gain a lot of scandals of the people who were committed suicide in Foxconn, probably because involving with some kind of a sexual scandal as well, or maybe some of the personal disputes. Anyway, the CCP had got all kinds of evidence against Guo Taiming. So basically, with the money bribing, with all this benefits interest, with all this sexual scandal of control, Terry Guo cannot get out of the hand of the CCP. So that and then he, as I was saying, that together with Jack Ma, they have stolen the best technology of the US, and then also transferring back into in China, and they were the greatest thieves of the century. And in fact, that you see that Jack Ma before, right, at the time that when President Trump gaining the office, didn't he just come to the US and promising about 1 million jobs, tens of billions of funding? Where have they now? Have you seen any of them coming into fruition, coming into appearance? No, I mean, they were the liars and they were the scammers. But the thing is that you see, when Xi Jinping came to see Terry Guo, basically he's saying that you are mine. You are going to take Taiwan for me. And that's it.
Is the two guns, do you think that the timing of this, and let's leave aside the vision from the goddess, because we're not questioning that with Terry Guo. But do you think that just given the timing otherwise, that the CCP might have gotten concerned that the mayor of, Kaohsiung, Han, may not have a win, and all of a sudden Terry Guo, because the primary for the Kuomintang, for the KMT, is in June. This is a very late entry into the campaign. Remember, President Trump had really been working on it for a number of years. When he came in June of 2015 into the primary season, that was really at kind of the beginning of it. And so and of course, everybody, at the time said Trump has no chance. Trump is a joke. Trump is a clown. He has no chance. Of course, at Breitbart, myself and others said Trump's going to be president of the United States. But Guo enters very late, just a month or two before the primary, having never actually ever talked about this really seriously. You pointed it out, and even many people didn't pick that up when you pointed it out back in September of 2018. Do you think there was a concern that Han, who clearly has close relationships in China, and who is talking about reunification, and is not a hardliner about independence and freedom of the Taiwanese people, do you think the CCP got nervous and that's why they wanted not a one gun but they wanted a two gun solution?
我想问一下，就是说是我们先不管这个的马祖的那些的事情了啊。那比如说，你看他们在这个的时候宣布是郭台铭的参选。那么因为国民党第一轮的大选呢，将是6月就要进行的。那么现在已经是4月底了啊。那从4月底到6月的话呢，你看已经是只不过是1个多月的时间，是很晚的时候宣布要参选的。那在这一种的实际上，你觉得是否就是说是原来高雄市长韩国瑜 一开始就是选他是应该是内部就是定他为作为这个的国民党这个的竞选人，但是由于是否就是说他非常的这个的高调的说是他不排除这个的两岸统一这样的言论，可能就影响了他的一些的获胜的一个的机会，是否就是这个的共产党有点的紧张，就觉得可能韩国瑜就是拿不住这个的竞选这个的总统的这个职位，可能因此呢就是让在那么晚的时间就让这个的郭台铭就出来。所以就是出现了这个的双枪的这个的战略，因为你知道你在18年9月的时候，你已经是做了这样的一个的预测，当然呢，当时没有人会觉得有这个郭台铭的这个的机会出现，但是现在，特别就是在现在1个月了，就出现了他宣布要过来一个的竞选，你觉得是否就说明其实中国共产党对于韩国瑜，觉得他还不够？
班农先生看得非常准啊，真的是非常准。这个我获得的一个情况呢，跟这个以前呢，最近有最大的一个变化是，就是共产党他们和韩国瑜接触，因为韩国瑜在北京上过学，北京大学，包括最近到台湾的这个到香港的访问，到大陆的访问，深圳、珠海，这个所有接触他的人给上面的报告是，韩国瑜此人是一个选举的好人。此人道德不可相信，毕竟是像郭文贵一样，文化教育程度太低 ，hold 不住，对他一致评价。我先跟你说你先翻这一段。
You see, Mr. Bannon, you are absolutely correct in your, your view. You see that the CCP recently had the change of attitude towards Han Kuo-yu. You see that Han Kuo-yu you see that he actually was a graduate from Peking University, so that he had a close tie with China. The thing is that but then he recently went to visit Hong Kong, visit Shenzhen, visit Zhuhai. And then the feedback coming back to the CCP is that they said that Han Kuo-yu probably is a okay candidate, but the thing is that in his moral he cannot be trusted, and also that he is just like Mao Guo, very low in his quality and then in his education and so on and so forth. And
this is true, sir.
So that is what they actually come back and saying that.
那么，共产党早就定好，一定是郭台铭。郭台铭为什么共产党一定要他选总统？郭台铭本人确实一直在犹豫，因为共产党认为郭台铭此人极懂政治，而且关键他能跨3届，美中台第1届，第2台湾的政商生产领域第2届，第3届郭台铭是现在大陆最急需的一个能和老百姓沟通产业化的唯一一个人所以说共产党早就已经定准他了。还有大家不知道的秘密，郭台铭和原来的王岐山还有习近平主席关系非常好，更重要的事情和江家好，江泽民家族有各种利益，所以说符合中共的老的共产党 GOP 新派未来派利益国家战略产业战略非郭台铭不属。郭台铭还真有点犹豫，但是最后习近平最后在北京跟他见面说，你得出山，你现在我们全力以赴，一旦出现多大的事儿我都支持你。经过了听说明着是30分钟，私下2个多小时谈话，郭台铭说我干这一票了。这时候韩国瑜还在那儿到处觉得自己是总统的，这就是共产党永远是2个枪，背后面还隐藏着小飞镖这就是共产党流氓黑社会文化。我得到的情报，郭台铭知道我说是真是假的。你在北京怎么见的面，怎么跟你说的我太了解了就这么简单。美国人完全没概念。美国人的现在最好的一个台湾应该说是最好的一个好哥们儿，现在已经班农先生还在那块呼吁台湾呢，还要帮这个帮那个呢，人家都给你解决完了。我昨天给班农先生说，我说我告诉你，赖清德还有任何人赢的机会没有。我告诉你， 赢一定是郭台铭，干倒郭台铭只有一个人，美国任何人不可能。
You see that the thing is that you see that within Terry Guo, he is definitely the internal pinpoint person to gain the president's office of Taiwan. That is already decided long ago and internally, because they think that China CCP knows Terry Guo. He understands politics very, very well, which is very, very different from Han Kuo-yu. You see, the thing is that Terry Guo, he is the only person who were able to actually understand and connect China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and the people, and the politicians, and then also the industry. He was also, I can tell you the secret, that he secretly knew Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping very well. He also had deals and relationship with Jiang Zemin's family. So that is why that he had connection with the GOP. And at the same time, he galvanized relationship with the futures of the China's government, the new parties that is represented by the Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping. And he had a heart to the people in China and Taiwan because his business employs so many of the people. So basically, he could actually create this adhesive relationship for all the places in question, and all parties and all people. So that you see, that is why that China is utilizing this double gun strategy. While the Han Kuo-yu, he was still going around thinking that he is the most popular, the highest odd person to go into the office, and then visiting places and thinking that he's great, but that is all the superficial illusion. That is exactly China's usual ploy. He maintained one superficial illusion, but basically they are supporting the guy who's not so high profile from the beginning, and then only at the end that he surfaced, and that is Terry Guo. And then of course that there are, there are a lot of other secret weapons as well. If it is not enough that they're going to help out with those.
We have so much more to go through. We have so much more of the show. We're now over an hour and a half into this. Maybe I recommend we wrap it up. But with that, on this question for you, Taiwan is a country of what, 30 million people, or to 25 to 30 million people, relatively small in the world stage. But that election next January 20th, how important is that election for Asia, how important it is for the Chinese people in the mainland, how important it is for the Taiwanese people, and how important it is for the American people?
那其实我们在这个的话题上呢，已经说了1个半小时了，我觉得我们应该是要结束了啊。当然，结束前我问这一个的也是非常重要的问题啊，就是说其实台湾是一个非常小的岛屿。它的人口只有3000万，那它的下一次的大选呢，将是在2020年的1月20号进行的。那么这一次的大选，在那么小的一个地方，那么不太多的人口，这一个的大选，它其实对于它的重要性有多强？对于亚洲来说，对于中国的老百姓来说，对于台湾来说，其实有哪些重要性呢？
我觉得。台湾这次的选举主要是否能把美国就撵出亚洲，是否能让世界看到中共控制亚洲，是否独裁政治应该控制世界，这是一个标志性的事件，它会深远地影响着世界的未来和政治。
It is going to be a very symbolic election. Because basically it's going to show the world how the US is going to respond to this election, and what is the US position in this election, what it will be doing. And then also that is showing the world that how the interaction of China and the Taiwan and in this election Basically, it is telling the world that what the China is going to be doing, Taiwan is going to be doing, and the US will be doing. So it is a very symbolic time and a symbolic event.
Well, I can tell you, Miles, since you called it back in September, it's something we'll be covering intensely over the next 8 months, and particularly this primary in June, and see if Terry Guo. My thesis is that Terry Guo cannot give up control of Foxconn, and I just don't see how technically the people in Taiwan can have someone run who's not prepared to totally step away from his business and really put it. When I say step away, put it in a blind trust. In other words, he has no control over it. It's in a blind trust. It goes into a trust. He has trustees, and those trustees are not family members. It's arm's length. He then would run for president, and that's put in a blind trust that he has no control, no say-so, nothing. The probability that that will happen is zero. This is an individual that has built one of the great manufacturing, one of the great industrial powers in the world from literally nothing. It is, he said the other day he's stepping down, he's stepping back. As chairman, as CEO, as an investment banker, I saw that a million times where an entrepreneur said, yeah, I'm stepping back. I'm stepping back. But, 4 weeks after they've turned it over to the minions, they're questioning everything. They're criticizing everything. They don't know what they're doing. They're ruining my business, and they step right back in. If the standard is for Terry Guo to run for president of Taiwan is that he has to put the business of Foxconn into a blind trust, zero probability he runs for the presidency of Taiwan.
那我觉得呢，其实既然是呢，文贵去年2年前去年已经是预测到呢，郭台铭将竞选这个台湾总统的。那么所以的话呢，我觉得下来8个月的时间，我们可以就是继续的密切的关注这个的事态的发展，尤其是对于这个的6月份的时候这个的竞选的活动，我们也可以来到呢是观察一下的。那么当然，我自己就是认为其实郭台铭根本不可能是就是说。把整个富士康，它是自己白手兴家建立起来的一个的1000亿美元的一个的业务，让他呢就是让他的身边的一些的高管来到呢，完全是来到管控，就是说是让他信赖他隔壁的人。完全是不管，完全是放手，让他的身边的高管来到管理这个业务，我觉得是完全是零可能性的。这个是我的一些的意见，我们拭目以待吧。
郭台铭的生命和他的事业已经在前天结束了。
But I can tell you that the life and the career of Terry Guo has ended 2 days ago. In fact.
他和共产党在一起合作的时候，就像得了艾滋病一样，没有爆发。他这一选举总统就爆发了，结束了。但他会选上总统代价谁来付？台湾人民来付。
You see, the thing is that his cooperation with the CCP is basically like a disease. That it was in the incubating period of time before, but once that his cooperation come into the surface, the illness has started to activate, to explode. But of course, that is going to be paid for with the lives and the livelihoods of the Taiwan people. But his life has ended.
你知道我最爱我自己什么吗？
Do you know what I love myself the most?
我就是跟共产党睡了29年觉，但是从来没跟他发生性关系。
You see, the thing is that I have slept with the CCP for 29 years, but I never have any sexual intercourse with it.
我上天保佑，咱们休息一下，好不好
Okay, so we have a break.
完了，我们休息10分钟，10分钟回来。
10 minutes.
10
We
minutes
come back
rest.
in 10
Thank you,
minutes.
everybody. Yeah,
We come back in 10 minutes.
yeah. 10 minutes. Just keep.
你们的 KP，当年选举时候说过啥？我简单的让人查查，你承诺过的事情基本没做到。当年他进去后，他最想抓的就是谁？把马英九干掉，你也没干马英九啊。然后把那个小巨蛋的事儿，你想搞定，你也没搞定啊，是吧？不但没搞定，你还跟这个关系联合。然后你现在开始什么玩大胆的了？你想继续干，下次来选这个台湾的总统，肯定不是你了。台湾下届总统就是郭台铭了，你就不用想了，肯定是郭台铭啊，不用选。郭台铭早就布好局了啊，郭台铭早就布好局了。然后你想继续连任，大陆以为你连任了，就在这块捧你，但是你记住，你就是个棋子儿，你不允许伤害台湾人民，你不允许卖台。你们的 KP，当年选举时候说过啥？我简单的让人查查，你承诺过的事情基本没做到。当年他进去后，他最想抓的就是谁？把马英九干掉，你也没干马英九啊。然后把那个小巨蛋的事儿，你想搞定，你也没搞定啊，是吧？不但没搞定，你还跟这个关系联合。然后你现在开始什么玩大胆的了？你想继续干，下次来选这个台湾的总统，肯定不是你了。台湾下届总统就是郭台铭了，你就不用想了，肯定是郭台铭啊，不用选。郭台铭早就布好局了啊，郭台铭早就布好局了。然后你想继续连任，大陆以为你连任了，就在这块捧你，但是你记住，你就是个棋子儿，你不允许伤害台湾人民，你不允许卖台。你们的 KP，当年选举时候说过啥？我简单的让人查查，你承诺过的事情基本没做到。当年他进去后，他最想抓的就是谁？把马英九干掉，你也没干马英九啊。然后把那个小巨蛋的事儿，你想搞定，你也没搞定啊，是吧？不但没搞定，你还跟这个关系联合。然后你现在开始什么玩大胆的了？你想继续干，下次来选这个台湾的总统，肯定不是你了。台湾下届总统就是郭台铭了，你就不用想了，肯定是郭台铭啊，不用选。郭台铭早就布好局了啊，郭台铭早就布好局了。然后你想继续连任，大陆以为你连任了，就在这块捧你，但是你记住，你就是个棋子儿，你不允许伤害台湾人民，你不允许卖台。
战友们好，我们又回来了啊。这个现在呢，我们跟班农先生，我们再来这个第二段啊，第二段。今天呢，在第二段之前呢，这个我先说一下，就最近这个美国内部事情，我们不参与美国内部政治，这段你不用翻译啊。这个刚才班农先生都说好了。这个但是呢，全世界都关注呢美国的关于美国川普总统的穆勒报告啊，通俄门这个事情影响巨大。那么所以呢，对不起啊，所以现在呢，我们要请教班农先生，穆勒调查报告到底是个什么情况？简单的花几分钟给大家分享，然后我们进入另外一个话题。这个全面被翻，这个就请了。我们先问一下班农先生，中国人很关心啊，和这个关于穆勒调查报告到底是什么情况，未来会往什么发展？他怎么看待这个问题？谢谢。
So, Mr. Bannon, a lot of the Chinese people are actually quite concerned about the Mueller's report. So, exactly what kind of situation now it is with the Mueller's report, and what is the development in the future for this report? Can you please give us your view?
Well, look, it's very simple. As I've said, I've been on this broadcast many times now, and in the fall of 2018, elections have consequences. That's why the election in Taiwan is so important. The coming presidential election in 2020 is so important. In democracies, elections have consequences, and the loss of the House of Representatives to the Democrats has a big consequence. In our system, the way it works in the United States, it's the House, the people's delegates that are changed every 2 years or voted on every 2 years. Our founders wanted it to be the closest to the people. It is that our founders, our founding fathers, put the control or the oversight of the executive branch. So in our system, you just can't be a king, or you can't be a dictator. You can't just say do what you want to do. It's checks and balances. Everything's checks and balances. And here you have the House of Representatives that has all the investigation apparatus of overseeing the administration. The Mueller report. Mueller was a special counsel set up by the Justice Department, which is an executive branch, and they've now come out with, I think it's 500 pages or 400 pages of a report. And I would recommend everybody read it. The president said today, and I'm just reiterating what President Trump said a few minutes ago, I think he was heading to play golf, that it's written, it's in his mind, it's very nasty. It's a very nasty written report. I will say, as someone was in the process, I was a little surprised that they went into they really wrote a narrative. If you read this, it reads, I have not read the entire thing, I've only read segments of it, but it does read almost like a novel, which I think was very surprising. And many of the supporters of President Trump have come out and been very critical of that it wasn't really put together like a prosecutorial document.
So, 其实啊，我觉得呢，这个的穆勒的这个的报告呢，其实就是一个的自由选举以后所产生的一个的后果。那所以为什么我们说是2020年台湾总统竞选也是那么的重要？因为每一次的选举以后，它都会带来一个的政治上的一些的后遗症的。那么穆勒的一个的报告呢，就是其中的一个的产物。因为你要知道，是2年前我们这个的美国的参议院，它是在一轮新的竞选以下。他呢，共和党就是失去了对于参议院的控制权，因为呢，大比数的就是让一个的民主党员呢，就是进入了这个的参议员的。那么，而且呢，它是一个的行政的一个的机构，它主要是可以制衡着一个的，我们是操作上我们这一个的行政执法的一个的制衡的一个的力量，所以呢，有一个的执法上的一个的机构，这个的参议员，他呢是希望是对特朗普总统做出一些的调查。那么因此呢，他们就是让这个的司法的部门是聘用了让这个的穆勒来到呢做一个的调查，而且呢，最近穆勒呢就是提出了一个的500页 的一个的报告。那么其实我是希望呢，大家都可以用一些的时间来到去看一下这个的报告的。为什么呢？因为这个报告里面呢，对于特朗普总统呢是有一个的非常深入的一种的分析。其实啊，对于我来说呢，我觉得这个的报告呢，对于我来说还是有一些的吃惊的，因为他的报告的方式呢，写的风格呢，就不像一个的检察官所写的一个的法律文件这样的文体来到这个的书写的。他的文体呢，简直就好像是我们在看一本的小说一样。就是说是非常有多种的性格上的深入的一种的介绍描绘，所以的话呢，看起来特朗普总统本人呢，就觉得他对我的描述呢是太过的不好了。
The report and the special counsel and really the attorney general came up to essentially two basic things. There was no collusion with the Russians, and there's no obstruction of justice that can then be taken and prosecuted on. And so essentially the report is now a report that's sent to the House. But that basic, two facts are, and I think the left media, particularly in this whole collusion with Russia, has now had a complete meltdown as Mueller's kind of concluded that there was no collusion with Russia.
那么其实呢，穆勒的报告当中呢是指出了2个的重点，主要呢就是说出是特朗普总统本人以及是他的这个的政府呢是没有跟俄罗斯是串通共谋来到呢去这个的阻碍这个的竞选的到总统的竞选的活动，而且呢他也被证实呢是没有这个的没有特别的妨碍司法的公正。那么这个呢是主要来说这一方面有一些的模糊的，但是呢对第一个的指控就是说是跟俄罗斯共谋这一方面呢，这一个的指控呢是完全已经是不成立的，所以呢让我们的左派的一些的民主党的人士呢在这一方面呢他们是完全是瓦解了他们的过去所做出的种种的一些的指控的。
Just two things in conclusion. That doesn't mean it's a long way from over though. And that's just the way our system works. And now the House has it. Whatever the leaders of the House decide to do is to be seen. Nancy Pelosi and the head of the Democrats are under enormous pressure. As I've talked, Miles, on your broadcast many times, the people that really went out and knocked on doors and really were the drivers of the victory of the House to take it back from the Republicans and hand it to the Democrats. They want to see President Trump's head on a pike. They're not friends of President Trump. They're his enemies, and they are very focused on going forward with impeachment. And they think this document, as I've said before, they're going to try to use this document to promulgate that. And of course, there's the allies of the president that say it's over. So this is a long way. You're going to see this continual fighting in Washington, really nonstop, as the president, I think, moves on to other things, the China deal. And other things to focus on. The Democrats, some element of the Democrats, and particularly these young firebrands. They have AOC, Omar, these young people that have now come into the House of Representatives are really anti-Trump. You're going to see a big push on that. So for those of you that are watching in mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, other places, this is although the basic facts kind of back up the president, this is a long way from being over.
那么其实我可以告诉大家呢，我自己个人来说，我觉得穆勒提出了这个的报告以后，至少我们也知道呢，特朗普总统在这个的跟那个的俄罗斯共谋的情况下，根本是不成立的这个的情况下呢，我们应该呢就是让这个的指控就过去了。那么我们应该是向前走的。但是呢，我可以告诉大家，是我们的民主党、我们的左派的这一些的精英分子，他们完全没有这一种的意思的，他们还是会继续来到是通过的国会通过了这个的 Nancy Pelosi， 她是我们这个的国会里面的这个的主持，他们将是会呢希望是继续对于特朗普总统呢来到做出各种各样的跟进的一些的指控。那么其实他们一开始的时候，他们其实已经是希望是通过这份的报告来到呢准备对特朗普的总统呢是做出弹劾的。但是现在竟然报告里面没有 对于特朗普总统跟俄罗斯的关系做出指控，因此的话呢，他们其实是失败了。他们想要进行的弹劾是不可以进行下去，但是呢，我们的民主党是不会放弃。他们还会呢进行各种各样的这个的行动，来到继续来到呢是为这个的特朗普的政权来到呢是创造各种的问题的，特别就是说 AOC 啊、欧妈呀这一些代表人，他们特别的恨特朗普的总统，所以呢他们将会是推动各种各样的对他找麻烦的各种各样的这一些的行动，所以我们中港台的各位的这个的观众们，我们可以说在这个事上还没有打上一个的句号，我们还得有很多的事情还会发生的。
The two things I think are the most important going forward and for people to look for is this, and I've said this from the beginning, this is part of the nullification project. And what I mean by nullification project is that the establishment in America, the financial, the corporate, the media complex, never wanted Donald Trump. And the reason they didn't want Donald Trump is they didn't want the little guy that Donald Trump represents, the working class people, to really have a voice, to have a strong voice in our system, to have a strong voice of how they can start to drive the process instead of the elites. Quite frankly, many of the elites are in bed with and have helped the CCP not just sustain power, but to become more powerful. It's those little guys. Like it's the little guy in Taiwan, the little guy in Hong Kong, the little guy in mainland China that is saying, hey, I'm tired of this. I want a different way to do this. That nullification project started immediately upon Donald Trump winning. A big part of this is the media. And that's why I call them the opposition party. This Russian hoax, and I think we have a crisis in the media here in the United States. And what I mean by that is that our mainstream media, which is very powerful, very wealthy, the people are paid a lot of money, have gotten two major things wrong, and not just kind of wrong, dead wrong. That was the rise of populism and Donald Trump winning the election, which they were totally caught by surprise. They thought Hillary Clinton, had it locked up, right? Number two was this whole Russian hoax. That really was Mueller's investigation. And people must remember this. President Trump turned over every document. President Trump made available every person on the staff. President Trump went out of his way to get everything to the prosecutors so they could see. So there was no stone left unturned, okay, to look into this. And they came out with no collusion. The missing of Donald Trump by the media and then the Russian hoax is two incredible black eyes for our media. And really puts them in a terrible situation.
那么呢，我可以告诉大家，我认为啊，其实这个的穆勒的这个的报告，其实是我们的这个的民主党派的人士，他们所组成一种叫做的使之无效的项目的其中的一部分。为什么叫做使之无效呢？其实说美国有很多的精英，很多的这个的企业。他们都不喜欢是特朗普的，所以呢，他们认为政治就必须要是精英来到去进行的，他们不相信是让一些的普通人，又或者是一些的民间的人士，不应该让这一些的人有力量、有权利。所以的话呢，权力应该呢是掌握在他们这一些的精英啊，或者权力分子啊既有的力量的手上的。所以的话，从特朗普胜利进入白宫的一天开始，他们就是在进行这一种的使之无效的项目，希望就是为他创造各种各样的一个的麻烦、困难，让他呢就是不能够来到进行他的这一些的这个的政府的这一些的行动的。那么因为呢，其实这个呢是我们美国媒体创造出来的一种的行动，因为美国的媒体它非常的有钱，而且呢他们也非常有强大的力量。其实我认为啊，它是我们的一种的危机，它也就是我所说的敌对的一种的力量，由他们来到呢是提出各种各样使到呢那个的特朗普面对的一些的问题，他们 因为呢，这些的媒体从一开始的时候，他们就估计错误了2个的情况。第一个，他们低估了这个的民粹主义、民粹的力量。第二呢，他们也低估了特朗普胜利的一个的机会率。他们一直在说呢，是希拉里一定会胜利的，所以呢，他们一开始就敌对着这个的特朗普，因此呢，他们也不会这个的放弃对于这个的特朗普政府的各种各样的一个的报道的消极负面的报道，而且呢，他们就是创造了这个的俄罗斯的这一个的骗局。那么他们就不断的来到说出是特朗普跟俄罗斯之间的关系，其实现在呢，这一个的报告已经是证实没有这一种的关系。可是我可以告诉大家呢，这一个的媒体以及是我们的民主党不会放弃各种各样的来到呢去造谣，来到呢去报复这一个的特朗普总统的。
You know, from comic books over here, the graphic novels, there was a great saying, one of the graphic novels, who watches the Watchmen? And I think that you'll see now in the coming weeks, President Trump is now going to turn the tables, and you'll hear a mantra, investigate the investigators. And I think this is very important for our democracy. I think it's very important for the freedom in our country. This project called Crossfire Hurricane, which was, and it was Attorney General Barr that called it spying on the Trump campaign, the whole initiation of that effort, who was involved, who decided it was a good idea, who was involved in it, how did it get funding, who authorized it, what information did they have, how did it get started. All of that, I think, is now a new phase of this that you're going to see. And I can say this as somebody that knows President Trump. He's relentless in these things, and I think he feels that the initial investigation was a hoax. I think he feels like the special prosecutor was, although he cooperated more than any president of the United States, he cooperated with his staff and with documents. I think you're going to see now that he feels that righteously it deserves to have a thorough investigation, just like he was investigated and his staff was investigated and the whole process was investigated. I think he feels now who watches the Watchmen. And so I think you're going to see this investigate the investigators is going to be another whole aspect of this that will take up a lot of time, a lot of effort, and will be something that we'll have to see what happens on this. But this is, I think the future of this will be this continual battle of the media and Trump. In the second part will be President Trump, justifiably, I think, and I think it has to happen. I think it has to happen for the good of our country. About exactly what went on here and what's the aspect. Look, particularly those watching in mainland China, democracy is very messy. It's the messiest system you can have. But remember, when the little guy gets a say-so, when people get the thing, you have checks and balances. I think it's a pretty perfect system, and that you at the end of the day you come to a conclusion. But it's a very messy, and it's constant fighting. And so I think we're just going on to the next phase of the fight.
那么呢，你知道我们在美国有一个的这一些的动画叫做是看守人那其实当中有一句话，我觉得非常的这个的合适来到形容我们今天这个的特朗普以及是穆勒报告的一个的局面的，就是说是谁来监视着这个的看守人。那么因为你看呢，穆勒他在进行这个的调查当中，很多的调查员动用了很多的调查员，他们不断的来到跟特朗普的总统来到去见面跟他的家人，跟他的一个的政府的官员，没有一个的总统面对那么多的这个的问话的一些的这一个的时间，也没有一个的总统面对那么大的一个压力，与这个的舆论以及是这个的媒体的压力。所以呢，他还是在尊重了整个的一个的调查的一个的过程。那么所以的话呢，我觉得现在呢，我们知道特朗普总统要把枪支掉头了，现在是由他来到这个的这个的做出一些的行动了。那么所以就是说，他提出一点，就是说呢，谁来到看着这一个的看守人呢？所以他就要说，我现在要对这一些的看守人，就是一些的调查员，也要对他们进行一个的调查。 为什么呢？就是说是你们是如何调查我的呢？你们这个的调查当中有什么的人是来到呢？有参与呢？有什么的资金呢？资金来源是在什么的地方呢？也有谁来到呢下命令，而且是授权你们来到做这一些的调查，而且做这方方面面的不同的这个的范围里面的一个的调查呢？所以呢，由特朗普总统面对了各种各样的压力以后，对于这个的媒体不愿意来到放弃对他的各种各样的一个的创造麻烦问题以后，他现在也采取了行动。那么我觉得他这样做呢，还是有合理的，因为为什么呢？我觉得不能够是由一面倒的让这个的舆论以及是这个的媒体来到呢进行任何的行动，是吧？我们必须要有平衡，也必须要有这个的检查，也制衡。所以的话呢，现在特朗普总统也说，我必须要是调查那一些的调查员，也要看他们的操作是怎么样的，资金是怎么样的，谁的下的一个的命令谁授权的。那么，所以就是证实我们这个的国家呢，是一种的民主的一个的国家。民主当然也是一个的不是很干净的一个的机制，很多的混乱的情况的出现，也有很多的争议的出现不是很清楚，有一个的主要的权力的局面，不像是一个的独裁的一个的政权。一个民主的情况呢，就是说是很多的普通人都可以发出他的声音，提出他的意见，而且是受到重视。那么就是产生了一种的权力制衡，而且是互相监察的一个的平衡的力量。所以的话呢，在我来说，这个的民主的机制呢，还是比较是完美的。
我觉得刚才巴农先生说了穆勒调查报告他的观点，我相信任何有良知的人，在目前的世界情况下，希望美国真的强大下去。只有美国领导这个世界呢，这个世界不再进入到我们100年以前那些荒蛮的时代再有这个希特勒的这种野蛮，中国文化大革命的这种野蛮，人道的危机。民主社会不完美，但是现在相比它是最好的。所以我们希望美国强大。美国我从来不认为是个国家，美国是全世界经营聚集的一个聚集的舞台就像这个曼哈顿86%的人都是外来人口。包括美国这个上万种语言和民族来到这里，我认为美国是世界精英和文明的一个所在地。那么希望美国强大。那么接下来请班农先生谈一谈，就是穆勒调查报告会和总统这个现在已经可以说他更加自由、更放得开了，会如何的影响中美关系和中美贸易？中美贸易到现在发展是什么情况请他简单的给大家说一下，谢谢。
I think that Mr. Bannon, that you have a great understanding on and an analysis of the Mueller's report, but I believe that any person that is conscionable that would wish that U.S. will continue to be great, and then the U.S. can continue to lead the rest of the civilization, so that times like Hitler, times like the Cultural Revolution will not happen again, that caused such disaster in a humanitarian aspect of our world. Now, but then the thing is that we know that democracy is not perfect, but perhaps it's the best mechanism that we can have. We also know that America is a country full of elites, and so many people, they are all immigrants, and we have so much diversity, and that makes this country great, and it will continue to be great. So now let's have a change that from the Mueller's report, since the Mueller's report is now being published, and then so that more of the investigation on this side, perhaps it could relax a little bit, and so that the government can turn their attention more to the U.S. and China trade negotiation. So what do you think about now is the situation on the China and the U.S. trade negotiation? What do you think that is going to happen in this area?
Well, the one thing that we know that's different than even the last time we had the broadcast is they've now said that any agreement at all will not come, and any signing ceremony won't come until at least it looks like President Trump's trip to Asia, to Japan, in late May or maybe sometime in June. I think there's a G20 meeting in Osaka. I know the president, I think, is scheduled to go to Japan to go see the new emperor. And there's the G20 in Osaka. President Xi will be a part of that. And so now they're talking about this thing even being pushed off. Miles, Reuters reported the other day, Reuters, the big news service, reported that subsidies to state-owned industries may be off the table right now. There's some confusion about these deep verticals that are being negotiated and where that really stands over and above the trade agreement, which is really to try to at least try to get some balance between the U.S. and China. The deeper are the structural issues around the Chinese economy, and that really is to bring it more into unison with the world economy. Miles has said from the first time I met him is that one of the ways the CCP gets their cash that they then money launder throughout the world, because what the CCP likes to do is to take the cash and to get it outside of China and put it into real estate in London and New York for themselves, not for the Chinese people, I might add, but for themselves. And one of the ways they get cash is through the state-owned industries. It's really the part of the big cash flow for the CCP. And so I think it's disturbing that that might be off the table. I think that forced technology transfers, and particularly these subsidies to the state-owned industries, were supposed to be two big ones. I think it's up in the air of where we really do stand right now. One of the big aspects is monitoring and execution on this deal. But the sooner we start to integrate China into the industrial democracy's world economic system, the sooner the working people in China are going to get a better deal. They're going to get better wages. They're going to get better environment to work in. They're going to get less pollution. All of that. And so I think that we're going to have to see how this turns out. But this is, to me, is the biggest negotiation of our time.
其实呢，我觉得现在的话呢，这个的我们不会很快的看到有任何的签订任何的这一些的协议了。那因为呢，我知道在下来的话，特朗普总统也可能要去是日本参加这个的大阪的这个的 G20的一个的峰会，那大概是在习近平总理呢可能也会到那边参加的，也会去见那个的新的这个的天皇。那么应该是在5月底6月初的时候吧，那可能有最新的进展呢，我也要等到是那个的时候，我们才会看到有哪一些的新的发展的。那么所以呢，在最近就不会看到有任何的一个的协议的签订了。当然我可以说呢，就是说据我所了解的话呢，我们其中一个的非常重要的要谈的一个的事情，就是说是在一个的谈判当中要谈的呢，是一个的关于国家企业、国营企业的一个的补贴的问题呢。这一方面呢，可能我们将不推进这一方面的谈判。那么就是说是呢，美国希望中国可以改变。那么中国的结构性的经济这一方面的各方面的谈判呢，也可能会暂时的来到那缓慢下来，就不会去再谈这个了，因为他们是希望是推进别的一个的中美贸易协议当中的一些的其他的一些的条件，所以呢，这一些的地方结构性的话呢，就不那么的深入的去讨论它。那么当然，其实我觉得呢，这个是一个的错误，好像是文贵前也说过了，每一次这个的中共获得现金，他们就可以拿到国外去不断的洗钱。那么比如说是呢，这个的现金获取最佳的途径就是国营企业，他们通过国营企业的操作获得现金，可以拿到去伦敦呀，或者是其他的西方世界国家去买房子。但是这些买了房子以后，其实不是国家国民老百姓享用的，都是他们这些的高级领导自己个人的一些的享受。所以的话呢，那么其实这一种的情况下， 中国进行强迫性的技术的转移，以及是国家企业的这一种各种各样的补贴，让他们成为一个的洗钱的工具。这一些呢，如果是不谈，中国不能够改变它的经济的结构，那不能够是跟全世界的经济接轨的话呢，其实也不能够改善是中国老百姓的生活，它的条件各方面的一个的情况。所以我认为还是一些的错误。
I'd like to, and I want to turn it back over to you. I think where it stands, I said this, I was at in Rome 2 weeks ago, I was brought over there to talk about the CCP and to talk about inroads made into the Vatican and into Italy. And I gave a live interview to CNBC, and I said at the time, I think they're now hawks, or, very hardcore guys in the CCP are saying, hey, we may not need a deal at all. If the Americans want us to make fundamental changes, we're just not going to make fundamental changes. And you may have these populists, and you may have these nationalists, you may have these people who support Trump, these blue-collar people, and you may have people like Lighthizer and Navarro and Bannon, and they're saying all this stuff. And however, we got a system we think works for us because it keeps us in control. And we've got Wall Street that's prepared to finance us. So tell me where our problem is. You've got these terrorists, but hey, the terrorists are bad, but you know what? The terrorists hurt the economy, but it really hurts the little guy in China. It's not hurting us. It's not hurting the elite in Beijing. They're living fine. There's no change of their life. And so I think we could be in a situation where some of the hardest core, what I call hawks, now I'm a hawk here in the United States, and Miles is a hawk, and we have, other hawks that are, very adamantly opposed to the CCP, particularly the radical cadre that runs it. But there's also hawks in the CCP. And I think, and I said this 3 weeks ago, I think you're seeing, and one of the reasons this keeps getting pushed out, you now have the hawks that are saying, hey, there's got to be some real changes. And there's guys in Beijing saying, why does it have to be changes? Our system works for us. May not work for the little guy in China, but we don't really care about the little guy in China. Right? That's his problem. And he doesn't have any power. We've got the power. And we've got the economics, and we can still suck cash out of here, and so things are just fine. And we've got Wall Street and the city of London and the party of Davos, all these people, Xi went to Davos, and they called him a hero. So tell me where the problem is. And I think, and that's why I like to toss it back to Miles, I think you're now in a situation, that's why this keeps getting backed up, that you got two harder core groups that are saying, hey, we need change, and they're saying, nah, that's too much change.
但我觉得下来的话呢，中美贸易谈判呢将会是陷入一个的僵局。为什么我会这样说呢？因为我们看到啊，其实我在这个的梵蒂冈意大利的时候，我是接受过这个 CNBC 的访问的。当时我已经说过一次呢，其实说我看到下来，美国我们是有鹰派的人士，鹰派的人士就是说一些的反共的人士啊，比如说我呀，文贵啊 ，Lighthizer 呀，或者是 Navarro 啊，这一些都是美国的鹰派的人士。但我看到呢，是现在中国参与这个的中美贸易谈判的人也更加的鹰派了。就是等于说他们也是非常的强硬，他们就是说是你美国需要我做出结构性的改变吗？我为什么要做结构性的改变？我为什么要跟别的国家、别的世界的这个的体制要结合起来呢？我们现在很好呀，我们通过国营企业，我们可以有很多的这个的现金，我们有华尔街帮助我们，我们要伦敦来帮助我们，达夫就觉得我们简直是英雄一样。我们现在现行的制度可行啊，我为什么要改变？所以他们就非常的觉得这个的是鹰派强硬，不退让，而且他说关税好啊，你征我的关税，我就付关税吧。这个关税对于我就是等于说是中国政府少数集权人士他们自己的生活来说产生什么影响？没影响啊，它只会是影响着老百姓的生活。那么当然他也不管老百姓的生活呀，他也不管民生呀，所以的话我为什么要做出改变？我为什么要让步？所以我们现在看到的情况就是两国鹰派的人士都站稳在自己的这种的这个的立场上面，不让步的话，可能就要有一个的陷入一个僵局，要发展下去还是有点困难。
那从目前来看，中美贸易啊，就当初我说的中美贸易谈判最终以非常滑稽荒唐的结果而结束，一定是这样子的。 这个半松先生可能他没注意到，我这在很早以前就这么说的，现在真的发生了。那么接下来我们要谈另外一个话题，就是说，本来 G20在日本要举行，川普总统和安倍首相他是可以在那见面的，但是这就差2个月的时间。我刚刚听说，就下一周安倍首相要马上飞来美国，和川普总统要紧急见面。这是有什么样的改变？是中美日关系发生了重大事件，还是说习近平主席在访问日本的问题上，或者说在北朝鲜最近发生一系列的奇怪的事情之后，安倍首相又紧急的访问这个川普总统来了？请半泽先生谈谈这个问题。
In fact, I had said that before, that it's going to be ended with some kind of it will be having some laughable ending, ludicrous ending for the US-China trade negotiation. And then it seemed like it is going to head towards that kind of ending, and perhaps that my prediction is coming into reality again, right? Now, Mr. Bannon, I hear that now Abe is going to come and meet Mr. Trump, President Trump, very soon. Now that we also know that they were supposed to meet later on in May, but then with the sudden turn of the event, that Abe is meeting President Trump next week. So what prompted that visit? Is that because that there are something that is suddenly changed between the situation of US, China, and Japan, and also that perhaps that may be something that Xi Jinping visiting Japan, and then North Korea having some strange things happening over there. So maybe that Abe did not know what is going to do, what to take it. So therefore, that he wishes to visit Mr. Trump and discuss about that situation. So what is your take on that?
Well, first off, Miles, I think it's part of all that. It's a little surprising. As you remember, I spent I think 8 days in Japan about 4 weeks ago. I gave a number of speeches all over the country. I was on TV. I actually talked to the Prime Minister Abe's party, the LDP, at the Diet, at their headquarters right there, and gave like a 2-hour presentation to them. I think that there are a number of things. And it kind of surprises me. I mean, I don't think this has been planned. This has just come on to the books. I think Abe's coming to, I think maybe Washington and Mar-a-Lago, like it was last time, one day in each, or maybe just going to Mar-a-Lago. I know he's scheduled to play golf with the president, I think on Saturday. I think it's part of everything you talked about. I think one of the most important things is that since the president was scheduled to come to Japan in May, it's pretty extraordinary that Prime Minister Abe, given President Trump's very busy schedule and his busy schedule, would carve out 2 days just to fly in and spend 2 days with him. I think it's a number of things. I think one, it's the America-Japan deal, about that trade deal to get going. I think it's also about Korea. I believe it's a big part of this is the trade deal with China. The one sense I got from Japan is just like from Taiwan and from Hong Kong, there's been a big change in East Asia. The CCP is being much more aggressive, whether that's trying to renege on the deal of the two, one country, two systems in Hong Kong, and trying to take away the freedoms of the Hong Kong people, whether this is new, obviously, pressure in Taiwan, whether this is pressure in the East China Sea, in the Philippines, in the South China Sea, all over in Korea. The one thing I can tell you from Japan in my visits, and like I said, I've been going to Japan since the 1970s, and I've been in business with the Japanese since the 1990s. There's a real sense of tension over there. Much higher perception of tension than I think here in the United States. And if nothing else, I believe that what Prime Minister Abe will tell the president, one of the things he'll tell the president is just that, things are moving very rapidly in East Asia. Things are moving very rapidly. They're going to have world implications. And I think that's the number one message he will bring. There's obviously a lot on the Japan-America relationship. There's a lot about Japan and China. that I'm sure they're going to discuss. And also, I think they're going to talk about the importance of this trade deal. Remember, I've said about this trade deal, this is not a trade deal. This is an armistice. This is about the economic war that the CCP has run against the industrial democracies, whether it's South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the United States, Europe, Canada, and the Chinese people. Remember, I think my saying is that, we now have a system where slaves in China make product for the unemployed and underemployed in the West, and that system just cannot continue on. The people in China have to be free and have to have full economic benefits of what's going on in the world, in that the CCP just can't continue to export this deflation in excess capacity. And so that's why I call this an armistice. But I think for everybody that watches these broadcasts, a big development is that the Prime Minister of Japan has decided to essentially fly over here for a 2-day consultation with the President of the United States. I think it's the two big things this week were Terry Gro's announcement that he's now going to run for President of Taiwan, and that and that Prime Minister Abe has decided to take some time out of his schedule and fly, what the 16-hour flight or 14-hour flight it is to fly to see the President of the United States. But those are two very big developments.
对，其实呢，我是这样看的啊，我呢3周前、4周前吧，我也去过日本，在那一边是待了8天的时间。我在当时呢是在电视上呀，以及是在全国呢是进行过很多的这个演讲，也是跟这个的安倍的政府呢的很多的官员们是见过面的。当然呢，当中我不知道他将要是过来跟特朗普总统见面，我只知道呢他们是在5月份的时候有一个的已经是安排好有一次的见面呢。所以的话，对于我来说也是很吃惊的一个的事情。听到他竟然长途的飞机14个小时就过来跟他见面2天，当中一定是有重大的事情的发生，是来到呢引起这一种的这个呢那么大的一个的行动的。那他可能来到的时候呢，有可能是先到华盛顿首府，有可能去海湖山庄，那么有可能就直接去海湖山庄跟特朗普总统是打2天的高球吧。那当然呢，2天而已，他们要谈的是什么呢？据我的了解的话呢，贸易是中美的贸易的谈判，一定是他们的这个的谈话内容之一，也会谈到是北朝鲜的一些的事情，当然就是这个的日本中国关系也会是一定会谈到的，因为我知道呢是日本现在特别的就是关注这个的台湾最新的发展，以及是香港的一些的最新的发展。那么从前是在已经我们知道是香港是一个的一国两制的，有一个的自由、一个的民主的一个的地方啊。那么当然现在是改变过来了。那么台湾呢，现在突然间呢，这个的郭台铭也又宣布也要进行这个的总统。那么出现了这一些的事情以后，日本特别就是感到一些的紧张，他们会对于呢这一种的情况的改变，对于这个的东海以及是南海各方面的情况都会出现一些的改变的。因此我相信他是要过来跟这个的特朗普总统呢是谈到这个的中日美日的关系，这个的日中的关系，以及是呢这一个的贸易一个的谈判上的一些的关系。那么因为呢我相信他会感觉得到呢是中国这样的一些的改变，亚洲的情况也是出现了改变，有可能战争发生，这个的危机也可能会有一些的提升。那么我们也知道了，那么我们也说过，其实这个的贸易这个的这个谈判呢，这个其实不仅仅是一个的贸易的谈判。那么日本也感觉到这一方面的一些的问题的，其实他也是感觉得到呢，这个的贸易谈判简直就是一个的经济的一个的战争，是中国发起对西方世界、文明世界的一个的经济的战争。它不结合这个的世界的经济的体系，它会继续的用便宜的这个的劳工，然后呢就是取代的西方世界的各种的就业率。那么而且呢就是它剥削了西方国家的一些的经济的能力，而且就是不断的输出这个的通胀。这个就是呢中国所做出的一些的 一个的经济的战争，所以呢，这个的情况不应该是容许下去的。我们必须要是创造一个的贸易上的、一个的经济上的一个的平衡。
巴农先生讲得非常非常好。我希望这次啊，这个川普总统能在这种国际环境的情况下，能和安倍首相达成啊 CPTT 的过去他已经被他 cancel 到的大西洋伙伴关系的贸易协议。我希望美国在这个事儿上应该川普总统做点创新，能回到过去的协议。另外一个呢，我觉得今天我们的直播的内容，大家这个呼应都非常的响烈啊，都夸巴农先生非常的帅，他刚刚瘦了12磅，我马上可能要付他钱了。对台湾的整个情况呢讲得非常非常的好，而且我认为呢，还是这句话，我每次都给巴农先生讲，到现在为止，我也没看到美国，包括日本、西方国家看清楚共产党对世界的威胁，也没有人真心的面对共产党的威胁，也没有人下决心来解决共产党的威胁。我希望他们真的能打开双眼，看到这个已经在上空飘荡的这块乌云啊，不至于让他们走入到灾难。这就是今天我们直播的节目的全部内容。
I wish that there is a very fruitful result between the meetings of President Trump and President Abe. And then I hope that they can return our whole trade situation to the transatlantic partnership. And then I hope that Mr. Trump can be creative, and so they're coming out and give us a great success. Now that, and then also that I see that from a lot of the feedback on the website, there are a lot of the people, a lot of the audience sending out texts saying that Mr. Bannon looks great, very handsome, since that he lost 12 pounds. And then also that you perform wonderfully and give us great insight on the views on the Taiwan issues, and then US and the Japan issues. But the thing is that you see, I have said that many times, maintained that many times, that in the US, perhaps in Japan and the rest of the world, no one really seeing through what the CCP is truly about, and no one really trying truly to deal with the CCP's threat, and no one is really determined enough and truly facing the threat posed by the CCP and deal with it. So that I hope at the moment this is going to be a warning sign that they're telling us the cloud is coming and that we do really need to deal with it. Otherwise that we will all be living in the shadow. Thank you.
我觉得我给巴农先生一再还有美国所有朋友说，中美贸易谈判不把中国的防火墙啊给拿掉，这个结构性谈判不谈的话啊，不解决这些核心问题啊，任何参与谈判的人都会是这场谈判的最后的罪人和输家，啊，最后都会成为这个 CCP 的笑话啊。巴农先生这个在这里，我希望他更加的促进让美国认清真相，让西方认清真相，了解 CCP 的威胁。再一个呢，很多战友呢，这个让我转达啊，班农先生在过去的这1年多的时间里边，在全世界演讲当中一再的重申呢，我们反对的是共产党的极少数人，反对这个体制啊。我喜欢中国人，爱中国，所以不反华不反中啊，反共极端分子。大家让我转达对他表示的感谢啊。
And also, Mr. Bannon, I must tell you that, China-US trade negotiation, a very important topic is about the firewall of the cyber industry. You see that if China not going to take down the firewall, and that is not going to open up, and that is basically a great loss in our trade negotiation. So that if we are not going to make them take down the firewall, that means that we remain to be the loser of that trade negotiation. And you must convey that message and to the government and make sure they understand the importance, the significance of the firewall posed to our nation. And then another thing is that a lot of the audience want me to convey this message that to you, Mr. Bannon. In the past year, you presenting speeches around the world, you always maintain that we are not anti-China, we are not anti-Chinese people, we are only opposing and going against the radical cadre of the CCP. And then we anti-CCP, the radical cadre, so that you have made the message very clear. For that, we thank you.
Well, last thing, in fact, I can't wait for the day that, my love and affinity for the Chinese people, I can't wait for the day, as messy as our system is, I cannot wait for the day that 1.4 billion Chinese get to vote and elect their House of Representatives, their House of Congress, that oversees the CCP, like Congress oversees the executive branch of our government. That will be a day of tremendous joy, I think, for everybody in the United States, for myself, and I think for the people in China, because that will be the day, the beginning of freedom for the Chinese people.
我也是要强调一点的，我呢是非常热爱中国，非常热爱中国的人民，我不能够呢等待。我是非常的这个的心急啊，就是非常的希望是等候着那一天的到来，就是说是看到中国14亿的老百姓能够是投票选出他们的众议院、参议院，就是执法、司法的2个机关来到呢是监管着他们的行政的部门，就是说是中国的共产党来到呢为中国的这个的国家执法，而且呢来到是这个的运作。那我是非常的希望是看到那一天的到来的。
法治基金呢是班农先生作为主席，凯尔拜斯先生作为主席，这个法治基金成为了中国人在海外，最真正的家啊。法治基金让中国第一个要有法治啊，公平，让人们不过得像猪狗一样的生活啊。我们要就是第一个大声喊出来干倒共产党、干倒 CCP 的人，这是班农先生我们现在的使命啊，永远不会改变。所有给法治基金捐款的人，留好你的票据。因为这个地方法治基金这个大楼将成为中国人现在唯一的合法的希望，而且这里你们捐的每一分钱我们没有动过啊。我们要动的时候，我们会班农先生啊和所有的董事长告诉大家说，我们现在开始用钱了，往哪用，让大家都知道啊，这是向大家的承诺。班农先生是中国有史以来唯一的一个外国这个层次的人啊，为中国人啊这个争取法治、争取公平，不过猪狗的生活。一位外国朋友，我们应该终生感激。
So that here I also have this message that you see we have the Rule of Law Foundation, and then Mr. Bannon is a chairman of Rule of Law Foundation, and then also that Cal Bass is another chairman of another arm of the Rule of Law Foundation. You see, this is I hope this is the home. This is the home of the Rule of Law, and I hope that this is also going to be a place where we can have a hope to do legitimate action and making use of the donors fund, and then all the donors that are making donation, they are going to have receipt, and without the chairman's permission, then nothing will be touched and nothing will be used. And also, this is our mission, and then the mission is that we are going to take down the radical cadre of the CCP, and that is the mission of Mr. Bannon and myself, and I pledge myself to you. And also that we must sincerely express our gratitude to Mr. Bannon, because you see, he is the only Western person that had wholeheartedly engaging in this fight of the radical cadre of the CCP together with us. We really thank you.
Thank you. Great honor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. 我们今天的直播呢，就结束了。班农先生还有什么话要说没有
？Our broadcasting should end here, but Mr. Bannon, do you have any more final words to impart?
Just for all the Christians and all the Catholics, underground church Catholics, and those even that worship at the Patriotic Church, but all the evangelical Christians. It's Holy Saturday here. It'll shortly be Easter Sunday, and so for obviously all our always wishing well to the Uyghurs and to the Tibetans and to the Buddhists and to all the people of China. Old 100 names, always our best wishes. But particularly since it's Easter morning or about to become Easter Sunday, to all the Christians, evangelicals, Protestants, Catholics, happy Easter.
那对我最后呢是希望是对我们在中国的这个天主教徒、地下的天主教徒、基督教徒，以及是各个的基督教的这个的宗教派的一些的信徒们，还有是比如说是西藏人啊，还有是维吾尔族的新疆人，我希望大家是祝愿大家呢，在我们这个的复活节的星期天有一个的美好的复活节，谢谢大家。
我们一起为14亿中国人民和美国人民和所有的基督教徒、天主教徒和所有是有信仰的人们，为他们祈福。
So we now pray for all Chinese people, Christian, Catholics, and Uyghurs and Tibets and everyone.
哎呀，这个每次祈福的时候都非常的幸福，非常的幸福。感谢所有战友们的收听，希望今天这个直播呢，这个不是占用和浪费了大家的时间。感谢班农先生，一切都是刚刚开始，谢谢。
So that every time I pray, I feel such happiness and such contentment. Now, the thing is that I must thank you all for joining us, and then thank you, Mr. Bannon, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you，谢谢，再见。
你们的 KP， 当年选举时候说过啥？我简单的让人查查，你承诺过的事情基本没做到。当年他进去后，他最想抓的就是谁？把马英九干掉，你也没干马英九啊。然后把那个小巨蛋的事儿，你想搞定，你也没搞定啊，是吧？不但没搞定，你还跟这个关企联合。